In 1998, Lisa Valdez, a cheerful software analyst from San Francisco, was found dead in her own home, sending shockwaves through her community. Her life ended tragically after a simple dinner party that she had hosted. Days passed before her decomposed body was discovered, revealing a vicious crime scene with 21 stab wounds. Despite leaving behind crucial evidence like DNA and fingerprints, her killer remained elusive for over a decade. It took 13 long years for justice to catch up with the man responsible for her untimely demise. This is the haunting tale of a 36-year-old vibrant woman whose life was cut short, leaving behind a mystery that tormented investigators for years. What drove someone to commit such a vicious and personal attack on Lisa Valdez, known as a vibrant and caring individual to her friends and community? How did the perpetrator manage to evade justice for 13 years, despite leaving behind crucial evidence at the crime scene? Let's look into the details of this mystery. Born on September 6, 1961, Lisa Christine Valdez was a woman known for her kindness and affection. Not much is known about her early life, but at the time of the incident, the 36-year-old was living solo in a San Francisco condo. She was known for her vibrant personality among her friends and loved ones. People around her often described her as a ball of energy who cared deeply for her loved ones. Unknown to them, this caring person would soon become the victim of a savage and senseless crime, shattering the lives of those who cherished her vibrant spirit. On a typical Saturday evening of May 16, 1998, Lisa hosted a dinner party filled with laughter and good company.
My cousin Lisa hosted a dinner party for her mother's boyfriend, and she had several people attend that dinner.
As the night wound down, her last guest, her mother, Helen, left around midnight.
Aunt Helen stayed after the party, helping clean up a little bit, and then Helen went home and then didn't hear from Lisa the next day or the next day, and was calling Lisa, and Lisa wasn't returning her calls, which is very unusual.
Here, the following day, on May 17th, Lisa missed her usual Sunday dance class, raising concerns among her friends and neighbors. A neighbor of hers who had been away for a weekend on his return noticed something odd about his own condo door. It seemed someone had tried to force their way in. The lock was damaged, the metal frame bent, and a strange mark, possibly blood, stained the door. Worried, the neighbor reported the incident to the building manager, but didn't involve the police. Little did anyone know behind Lisa's closed door, a tragedy had already unfolded. Her absence from her routine walks and errands hinted at something deeply wrong, yet no one suspected the gravity of the situation. This seemingly ordinary series of events would later take a chilling turn, revealing a disturbing truth hidden behind the walls of Lisa's home. May 20th, 1998, a day which was supposed to be a typical Wednesday morning, but soon turned into a disturbing reality. Lisa Valdez's housekeeper arrived at her San Francisco condo, expecting a routine cleaning session. But when she tried to open the door, it wouldn't budge. Something heavy blocked it from the inside. Peeking through, she saw what looked like a woman on the floor and heard a man's voice. Thinking she was interrupting something private, she left quickly. 2 days later, the building manager, alerted by a strong smell, entered Lisa's unlocked condo. There, he found her decomposed body, partly clothed and covered in stab wounds. It was clear this wasn't an accidental or natural death. Inspector Ronan Scholdice, arriving at the scene, was struck by the cruelty. Lisa hadn't just been killed. Her body had been mutilated, indicating a personal vendetta against her. Notably, Lisa's family pointed out her unusually short hair, a departure from her usually long locks. They believed the killer had taken it as a trophy. Examining the crime scene, investigators noted the apartment's cluttered yet untouched appearance. It didn't seem like a robbery. There was no sign of a struggle or items missing. The puzzle deepened. Who would want to harm Lisa so violently? And why? The evidence suggested a targeted attack, driven by personal animosity rather than a random act of violence. As investigators delved deeper, they faced the daunting task of unraveling the mystery surrounding Lisa Valdez's tragic demise. As the investigation into Lisa Valdez's murder went deeper, detectives found clues pointing to a struggle. Lisa fought hard against her attacker, leaving defensive wounds on her hands and blood spatters around her bed. Items like her bedsheet, pillows, and torn underwear were stained with blood, suggesting a chaotic scene. Investigators also discovered 2 Band-Aids in the toilet, likely discarded by the killer, along with a partial fingerprint under the toilet seat. Despite efforts to match the print to known suspects, no match was found. Neighbors provided further insights. One reported hearing a loud noise from Lisa's apartment in the early hours of May 17th, followed by slamming doors and footsteps downstairs. Another neighbor, having noticed a blood smear on Lisa's door, similar to the one left during an attempted break-in nearby, also raised suspicions. Lisa Valdez's autopsy unveiled a gruesome reality. She had suffered 21 stab wounds across her upper body in a frenzied attack. The assailant targeted her chest, neck, jaw, and face within minutes, leaving her with fatal injuries from the blood loss. However, due to advanced decomposition of Lisa's body, crucial details like the time of death and the occurrence of physical assault remained elusive. With an abundance of physical evidence at the crime scene, forensic analysts faced the challenge of prioritizing items for DNA testing. Among them was the leading forensic scientist Alan Keel, focused on pillow number 22. Intrigued by its distinct blood pattern that suggested multiple sources. Extracting DNA from the stains, he confirmed the presence of Lisa's DNA, along with an unidentified male's, a potential breakthrough in the investigation. While analysts delved into evidence, homicide inspectors Armand Gordon and Curtis Cashin meticulously interviewed witnesses, including guests from Lisa's final dinner party and individuals who had recent contact with her. They aimed to reconstruct Lisa's last moments, pinpointing crucial timelines and potential leads. As the investigation unfolded, each detail became a piece in the puzzle, guiding detectives closer to unraveling the mystery behind Lisa Valdez's barbaric murder. Inspector Cashin meticulously analyzed Lisa Valdez's answering machine, uncovering a list of 40 recent callers. Among them was Albert Robinson, an acquaintance who had expressed romantic interest to Lisa, although she didn't share similar feelings. Despite their past friendship and regular meetings for lunch or coffee, Albert was swiftly ruled out as a suspect when his DNA didn't match the evidence found at the crime scene. Another potential suspect, Albert Cato, had recently asked Lisa out on a date, but their plans fell through when Lisa stopped returning his calls. Despite being invited to her dinner party, Albert Cato's DNA and fingerprints didn't match those found at the scene. In total, inspectors investigated 10 male suspects, collecting DNA samples and fingerprints for comparison. However, none of them proved to be a match for the DNA discovered on pillow number 22, or the latent fingerprint on the toilet seat.
DNA from you was found in Lisa's apartment from 1998. Yeah, I could have probably. Okay, you could have been, but you don't remember.
I'm willing.
Tell me, what is this all about?
Okay.
Anthony, you know what it's all about. You know very well that she's not alive anymore.
No.
No, just
You can go ahead and cry. You can get emotional, and it's good. It's good.
Can I get something to write with, please?
absolutely.
Anthony Quinn Hughes, another man who had been in contact with Lisa, had made 2 calls to her shortly before her disappearance, raising suspicions. However, unlike the previous suspects, he was not initially considered a suspect in her murder. Advancements in DNA technology eventually led to a breakthrough in the case. A new testing method, called short tandem repeats, or STR, was used to retest the DNA found on pillow number 22, creating a profile that initially didn't match any in the database. Then, in 2011, a significant development occurred, a cold hit. This term refers to when a perpetrator is linked to a crime scene in an unforeseen manner, despite not being part of current leads in the case. Forensic experts confirmed the match between the DNA on the pillow and Anthony Quinn Hughes, whose DNA was in the database for unrelated charges. With Anthony now the prime suspect, investigators compared his fingerprints to the latent print found on Lisa's toilet seat. The match was undeniable. The print belonged to the middle finger on Anthony's right hand, with identical features in key areas. This revelation marked a pivotal moment in the investigation, as Anthony Quinn Hughes emerged as the key suspect in Lisa's murder. The forensic evidence tied him directly to the crime scene, bringing investigators closer to uncovering the truth behind Lisa's tragic fate. The evidence against Anthony Quinn Hughes was overwhelming, leading to his arrest for Lisa's murder. He was detained on September 10, 2011. During police questioning, Anthony acknowledged knowing Lisa from their teenage years, but claimed not to have spoken to her since the late 1980s. However, when confronted with the evidence linking him to the crime, Anthony reacted violently, attempting to harm himself with a pen while expressing a desire to die.
I want to die.
You
If
don't
guys
wanna-
are trying to pin something on me.
No,
I
we're
will
not trying
die.
to pin anything on you.
You know what we have on you.
Anthony.
Despite his efforts, the injuries were not fatal, and Anthony was formally charged with murder. Anthony's trial commenced in December of 2015, with his defense arguing that he lacked the physical capability to overpower and kill Lisa due to his medical condition myasthenia gravis causing muscle weakness. Diagnosed 5 years prior to the murder, Anthony's condition forced him to resign from his job. However, with proper medication, the disease could also have gone into remission, allowing him to maintain normal strength. Despite some difficulty with his repeated arm and hand movements, his neurologist deemed him physically capable. The defense further claimed Anthony's shoulder injuries rendered him incapable of carrying out the stabbing. Yet despite undergoing surgery for torn rotator cuff tendons, Anthony remained physically capable of heavy lifting. Testimony from Anthony's ex-wife confirmed his myasthenia gravis diagnosis, which had also impacted his employment. However, she couldn't recall any incidents in 1998 indicating Anthony having returned home injured or later than usual. However, the prosecution aimed to dismantle those arguments, painting a different picture of Anthony's capabilities and potential involvement in Lisa's murder. Throughout Anthony's trial, he adamantly denied any contact with Lisa or entry into her condo, claiming the DNA evidence didn't prove his guilt. However, the DNA found on pillow number 22 contradicted his claims, firmly backing his presence inside Lisa's apartment. This discrepancy undermined Anthony's credibility, as did evidence of his calls to Lisa's phone, despite his claims of no communication. The prosecution painted a picture of Anthony's continued romantic interest in Lisa, including the suggestion that they met on the weekend of her death. Witnesses from Lisa's dinner party indicated she had plans with a mystery date, which could have triggered Anthony's rage upon rejection, potentially leading to her murder. While the exact events of that night remain unclear, testimony suggests a possible motive behind Anthony's actions. Ultimately, the jury convicted Anthony of first-degree murder for Lisa's death on November 4, 2016. However, they couldn't agree on attempted charges due to insufficient evidence. Consequently, a mistrial was declared on that count, and Anthony received a reduced sentence of 16 years to life for second-degree murder. In 2018, Anthony appealed against his conviction, citing a 13-year delay between the murder and his arrest, claiming it violated his right to a fair trial. He argued that prejudice had tainted the case due to the prolonged delay, challenging the validity of his conviction. Maintaining his innocence, Anthony insisted that his DNA and fingerprint found at the crime scene were planted or mistakenly linked to him. Nevertheless, his conviction was upheld, and he was sentenced to incarceration in San Joaquin County, California. As of 2024, he is eligible for parole, but there is hope that justice will prevail and he will remain behind bars. Despite Anthony's protests, the evidence against him and the court's decision stands firm, leaving unanswered questions about Lisa's tragic death. With the arrest of Anthony for the murder and attempted assault of Lisa Valdez, there was a sense of closure for both the Valdez family and the detectives involved. Pam Hofsass expressed gratitude for the forensic evidence that cracked the case after 13 years. Despite the pain of their loss, the Valdez family welcomed the arrest, finding some solace in the eventual culmination of the investigation. While nothing could bring back their loved one, the arrest marked a step towards closure in their grieving process. In a quiet stretch of countryside near Salinas on March 8, 1987, Ray Demel and his wife Rita were making their way home to Seaside, along Blanco Road near the Salinas River Bridge. What should have been a routine journey turned into a nightmare when tragedy struck. Ray was mercilessly killed by the roadside. The killer remained elusive for years. Fast forward 15 years and the case remained unsolved, leaving investigators stumped for answers. But in 2002, a glimmer of hope emerged. Detectives teamed up with a group of metal detector enthusiasts known as the Treasure Hunter Societies of Santa Clara Valley. Together, they scoured the area, unearthing crucial evidence buried beneath the ground. Among the findings were the murder weapon and other related items, reigniting the search for justice in Demel's case. What led to the breakthrough in solving Ray Demel's cold case after 15 years of silence? How did a group of metal detector enthusiasts become instrumental in uncovering buried evidence crucial to solving the mystery? Let's look into the details of this case. Salinas, California is a city nestled in the heart of Monterey County and has its own unique charm. Known for its agricultural richness, Salinas carries a down-to-earth vibe, where friendly faces are a common sight. Life here offers a blend of recreational spots and historic sites, making it a family-friendly haven. In this tight-knit community, it's not uncommon for everyone to know their neighbor's name, fostering a sense of belonging. Safety is a hallmark of Salinas, where doors often remain unlocked in this close community. However, like any place, it has its share of avoidable spots. Little did the peace-loving residents of Salinas know that something troubling was about to happen. Raymond Edwin Demel, born on April 30, 1939, in Olean, New York, had a story beyond the ordinary. He was a man with a golden heart who was raised by his parents, Edwin Joseph Demel and Lola Eveline Hills. Raymond served his country as an Army veteran and later found his calling as a correctional officer at the Soledad Correctional Training Facility. Alongside his wife Rita, Raymond cherished their family life. He was blessed with 2 daughters and a son. Beyond his duties, Raymond had a passion for family gatherings and treasured moments. He dreamed of creating lasting memories and watching his children grow into their own paths. Little did he or his loved ones know, the tranquility they enjoyed was about to be shattered, marking the beginning of a tragic journey they never saw coming. On the evening of March 8, 1987, Raymond and Rita Demel drove along Blanco Road, headed home to Seaside. The night air hung heavy, and Raymond, feeling weary, decided to pull over near the Salinas River Bridge for a rest. The couple had been drinking, a fact that would later play a significant role in the events that unfolded. As Raymond dozed off, Rita grew concerned about her husband's well-being and attempted to signal passing motorists for help. Then, a young man, driving a white pickup truck, noticed their distress and pulled over to assist. However, as fate would have it, an unforeseen accident occurred. In the dimly lit clearing, the Demel's van nudged against the white pickup, triggering an unexpected reaction from the truck driver. Anger flared, and in a moment of blind rage, the driver drew his weapon and fired a single shot. The bullet found its mark, piercing Raymond Demel's chest. Rita, shaken by the sudden violence that had befallen her husband, wasted no time. With trembling hands, she reached for the nearest phone and dialed authorities, her voice trembling as she relayed the harrowing events that had unfolded by the roadside.
Yeah, I've got a man on my line reporting that there's a lady reporting that her husband is lying in the van. He's shot out the window. He won't respond to her, and she doesn't know if he's dead or alive.
With that call, the wheels of justice were set in motion, marking the beginning of a complex and tumultuous case that would grip the community of Seaside and beyond.
He was in the driver's side. The side window of the driver's door is broken. I recall one bullet hole through the roof, and the other bullet had entered Mr. Demel from the left side.
During their investigation into the killing, detectives stumbled upon a crucial piece of evidence: a man's address book left behind at the scene.
An officer picks up a small address book, dropped in the dust close to where the shooting occurred. Detectives wonder if the killer didn't perhaps drop the book as he fled the scene.
This discovery led them to Norman Price Baird Jr., the book's owner, who quickly became the prime suspect. However, despite their suspicions, investigators hit a dead end due to a lack of additional evidence linking Baird to the crime. Adding to the complexity of the case, Baird's wife also came under suspicion, casting a shadow of doubt over the investigation for the next 15 years. As time passed, the case grew colder, and despite the detectives' best efforts, no breakthroughs emerged. The community was left haunted by unanswered questions and unresolved justice as the years went by and there were lesser chances of cracking the case. After the tragic murder of Raymond Demel, his family struggled to come to terms with their loss. His widow and children eventually moved away from Seaside, each finding their own way to cope with the pain. Young Tina Ambis, one of Demel's daughters, remained determined to seek justice for her father. She made regular calls to the Monterey County Sheriff's Office, hoping for updates on the case, but they rarely brought any news. Meanwhile, a year earlier, in 1986, Raymond Jr., Demel's son, had tragically taken his own life, which was already a heavy burden of sorrow for the family, to which a further layer had been added after Raymond's demise. Despite their personal struggles, the family's continued interest in the case, coupled with the memories of detectives who had worked on it since 1987, prompted the sheriff's office to revisit the investigation in the year 2000. The pivotal moment came when Fred De Los Santos, a newly appointed detective specializing in robbery and homicide, attended a seminar on solving cold cases.
And he answered the door. I told him who I was and what I'm investigating, and told him that I needed him to come down to the office, and he agreed to do it.
Armed with the Demel's file, De Los Santos embarked on a journey to Nevada to re-interview family members and revisit old leads. His dedication breathed new life into the stagnant investigation, offering hope to a family that had long awaited closure. As De Los Santos meticulously combed through the evidence and interviewed witnesses, the once-forgotten case of Raymond Demel's murder began to resurface, inching closer to the truth with each passing day. The tireless efforts of both the family and law enforcement brought renewed attention to a case that had languished in the shadows for far too long. In 2002, Detective Fred De Los Santos took charge of Raymond Demel's cold case, hoping to finally bring closure to the family. He interviewed Rita Demel and other witnesses, including Ronald Hughes, an old friend of Norman Price Baird Jr., the prime suspect in the murder. Hughes, who had fallen out with Baird, revealed shocking information to De Los Santos. He confessed that Baird had visited him after the shooting, admitting to the crime, and left behind the murder weapon along with ammunition in a buried box at Strom Ranch near Old Stage Road. This revelation was significant, as there had been rumors in 1987 about Baird leaving the weapon with Hughes, but he had refused to confirm it back then. Years later, Hughes, now burdened with a family and children, felt compelled to come forward with the truth. His friendship with Baird had soured over time, and he couldn't bear the guilt of keeping the secret any longer. Despite Hughes' cooperation, locating the buried evidence proved challenging. Hughes couldn't find the exact spot where he had buried the box, so De Los Santos turned to the Treasure Hunter Society of Santa Clara Valley for assistance. This group of metal detector enthusiasts eagerly took on the task, hoping to uncover the crucial evidence that had eluded investigators for years. On February 2, 2002, about 20 members of the Treasure Hunter Society descended upon the Strom Ranch spot. After a thorough search, they unearthed various items, including a locket, a turn-of-the-century bullet, and finally, the ammunition box, containing the key evidence in the Demel murder.
Detective De Los Santos IDs the ammo box as the one Ron buried more than a decade earlier.
The discovery of the military-issued ammunition box was a breakthrough moment. After the metal box containing crucial evidence was discovered, detectives took it to the sheriff's crime lab for examination. Evidence technician Lauren Zeffro carefully inspected its contents, which included a Colt .45 handgun labeled Model of the U.S. Army, along with magazines for the firearm, a cleaning swab, and boxes of bullets still bearing price tags. Using advanced techniques and technology, Zeffro managed to extract latent fingerprints from these items. These prints, preserved in the ground for 15 years, were meticulously analyzed and found to match those of Norman Baird, the prime suspect in Raymond Demel's murder. The military-issued metal case effectively protected the evidence from deterioration, providing a controlled environment that allowed for accurate fingerprint analysis. In addition to the fingerprint match, ballistics testing conducted by a State Department of Justice criminalist confirmed that the handgun found in the box was indeed the weapon used to shoot Demel. Further investigation revealed that the legal owner of the gun had reported it missing in 1984, coincidentally, around the time Baird moved into the man's former residence in Salinas. These findings solidified Baird's connection to the crime, leaving little doubt about his involvement. Baird, who had lived in the same house afterwards, became the prime suspect. Baird was taken into custody on June 19, 2002, finally facing the consequences of his actions. Just before his trial in 2004, he decided to plead no contest to second-degree murder, avoiding a lengthy legal battle. Raymond's widow, Rita Demel, attended the sentencing, hoping for closure. Sadly, Rita passed away not long after. Her two daughters, however, continued to seek justice. They attended Baird's parole hearing, ensuring he remained behind bars. Norman Price Baird Jr. spent 15 years as a free man after fatally shooting correctional officer Raymond Demel in 1987. Back then, Baird, a construction worker in his mid-40s, encountered Demel's vehicle on the road. A bizarre accident ensued, leading Baird to fire a Colt .45 handgun through Demel's window, ultimately killing him. Baird fled the scene, leaving behind only his address book. Baird had a history of drug use, as well as a criminal record, and remained silent about the murder, even during his trial in 2004, where he pleaded no contest. The prosecutor, Cynthia Jewett, was prepared for trial, gathering 27 witnesses, including the first motorist to stumble upon the crime scene. Yet to everyone's surprise, Baird opted not to stand trial, pleading no contest instead. While this spared the Demel family the agony of a trial, it also denied them closure about the events of that tragic evening in 1987. Sentenced to 15 years to life, he wasn't eligible for parole until 2021. Daughter Yoon Tina Ambis, accustomed to hearing of no developments in the case, found solace in the newfound evidence, though the plea brought mixed emotions for the family. The trial could have offered valuable insight into the mind of the gunman, shedding light on his motivations and actions. Like many victims, you want to have that opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with the person, expressed Ambis. It's just so senseless to me, she added, reflecting on the tragedy of her father's senseless murder. The dedication of both law enforcement and ordinary citizens like Ronald Hughes and the Treasure Hunter Society played a pivotal role in cracking the case.
I probably was intimidated by the wealth and the power and the money there because we knew who they were. We knew the relationship between the Skakels and the Kennedys.
It was Halloween night, 1975, in Greenwich, Connecticut. A wealthy town, usually quiet, buzzed with the innocent energy of teenagers out for some spooky fun. Among them was Martha Moxley. But the night of pranks turned into a nightmare. The next day, Martha's body was found in her own backyard. The scene was horrific. She had been beaten to death. Years would crawl by, filled with a heavy silence, before a glimmer of truth would finally emerge. Who could have done this to Martha in her own neighborhood? And why did it take so long to find out? Martha Elizabeth Moxley was born on August 16, 1960. She spent her childhood in Piedmont, California with her parents David and Dorothy Moxley and older brother John. In 1974, the Moxley family decided to move to a new place. Their destination? Bellhaven, a neighborhood in Greenwich, Connecticut that was known for its wealth. Dorothy, Martha's mother, finally remembered Bellhaven as a place where children could feel safe and have a lot of freedom. Leaving behind the familiar sights and sounds of California wasn't a problem for the 15-year-old Martha. In fact, it seems she thrived on new experiences. Back in middle school, her classmates had even voted her as the person with the best personality, so making new friends in Bellhaven came naturally to Martha. On top of that, she was a shining star academically, consistently bringing home straight A's. Her talents extended beyond the classroom as well. She was a member of the basketball team. Life seemed perfect for Martha. She had a loving family, a supportive group of friends, and excelled in both academics and sports. Unfortunately, this idyllic picture wouldn't last. The joy in Bellhaven would be shattered by the events of Halloween night in 1975. It was October 30th, 1975, the day before Halloween. Martha decided to head over to the Skakel house next door to hang out with some friends. The Skakels were a well-known family in Greenwich, and there was a buzz around them because of their connection to the Kennedys. Rushton Skakel, the father of the household, had a sister who was the widow of the famous Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Martha wasn't unfamiliar with the Skakel boys. She had been spending time that evening with Thomas and Michael, Rushton's sons. The close proximity of the houses played a role in their friendship. The Skakel residence was just a short walk, about 150 yards from the Moxley home. This close distance, combined with a relaxed approach to supervision by the Skakel parents, meant there was a constant stream of teenagers coming and going at the house. The night before Halloween held a special significance for teenagers in Greenwich. It was known as Mischief Night, a time when pranks were the order of business. Traditionally, these pranks were lighthearted. Maybe some toilet paper strung across a yard or a doorbell repeatedly rung. Nothing too serious ever came of it. Just some harmless fun to kick off the Halloween festivities. However, on this particular Mischief Night in 1975, things would take a horrifying turn, as Martha would go missing. As the clock struck 4 on the morning of October 31st, 1975, Martha still hadn't returned home. Dorothy Moxley, Martha's mother, began to get worried. Unable to shake off the feeling, Dorothy started making calls, desperately trying to reach Martha or any of her friends who might know where she was. Hours ticked by, and with each passing minute, Dorothy's anxiety intensified. Finally, a glimmer of hope emerged when she managed to connect with one of Martha's friends. This friend informed Dorothy that she had last seen Martha the night before, in the company of Thomas Skakel. With this, Dorothy decided to head straight to the Skakel residence. Perhaps Martha was just there, having spent the night there after all. Upon reaching the Skakel's house, she knocked on the door. When the door creaked open, it wasn't Thomas who greeted her, but Michael, Thomas's younger brother. Dorothy's heart sank as she inquired about Martha. Michael's response, however, did little to ease her anxiety. He flatly denied seeing Martha. It wasn't long after lunchtime on that same day that Sheila McGuire, a friend of Martha, stumbled upon a horrifying scene. Martha was found lying face down on the ground at the edge of her own family's property, hidden beneath the shade of a giant pine tree. The discovery was shocking. Blood stained Martha's clothes, and her jeans and underwear were pulled down around her ankles. Despite the disturbing sight, investigators wouldn't find any signs that she was taken advantage of. Next to Martha's body was a gruesome weapon, a 6-iron golf club that had been shattered into 3 pieces. The viciousness of the attack was horrifying. The force used to hit Martha with the club was so strong that it had broken the club clean in half. A piece of the broken club was lodged in Martha's neck. The police investigation took a sharp turn when they discovered a crucial piece of evidence. At the Skakel residence, officers found a Tony Penna golf club that had missing pieces. Shockingly, these missing chunks seemed to perfectly match the fragments found near Martha's body. This discovery placed the Skakel family square at the center of the investigation. Suspicion naturally fell on Thomas Skakel, since he was reportedly the person with Martha when she was last seen alive. When detectives brought Thomas in for questioning, he claimed to have said goodbye to Martha around 9:30 p.m. outside of his house. He even had an alibi. His friend Frank Lutton. He swore that he was watching television with Thomas at around 10 p.m. However, Thomas's story started to unravel further. He claimed he went to his room after that to work on a school report about Abraham Lincoln. Unfortunately for him, his teachers completely denied ever assigning such a report. This contradiction raised serious red flags for the detectives, leaving them to wonder what Thomas Skakel was really doing that night. Michael Skakel, on the other hand, when asked, told detectives where he was on that night. He said he left his house around 9:15 p.m. and went to his cousin's place. Then he came back home around 11 p.m. As investigators dug deeper into the Skakel family, a different picture began to emerge. Gone was the facade of a perfect, privileged family. In reality, the Skakel household was riddled with problems. As Michael Skakel would later reveal, his family was far from idyllic. He described their home life as a tumultuous mix of chronic illness, alcoholism, and a strict Catholic moral outlook that constantly caused tension and conflict. This chaos had been brewing for some time. Back in 1973, tragedy struck when Ann Skakel, Thomas and Michael's mother, lost her battle with brain cancer. This loss had a ripple effect. Rushton Skakel, the father, spiraled deeper into alcoholism. With his own problems consuming him, he was less and less available to properly supervise his children. Left largely to their own devices, the Skakel kids had access to seemingly limitless funds, a dangerous combination with minimal parental guidance. Investigators also found a crucial piece of evidence: Martha's diary. Within its pages, Martha documented her thoughts and feelings, revealing details about her relationship with the Skakel brothers. The diary entries showed mixed emotions, particularly towards Thomas. On September 12, 1975, Martha wrote that she went for a drive with Thomas, Michael, and some of their other friends. She explained that she ended up practically sitting on Thomas's lap while steering the car. Martha revealed that Thomas kept putting his hands on her knee and even put his arm around her later. Martha's diary also hinted at some frustration with Michael. An entry dated September 19, 1975 described an argument. Martha wrote that Michael was acting crazy and his behavior was awful. She said he accused her of leading Thomas on, even though she only liked him as a friend. The diary entry indicated that Martha believed Michael didn't understand it was possible to be nice to someone without being overly physical. The investigation took another turn when Thomas agreed to take a lie detector test. He passed, temporarily clearing him of suspicion. With no clear leads and a lack of solid evidence, the case against the Skakels stalled. For nearly 2 decades, the murder of Martha remained unsolved, and it remained a burden in the hearts of her loved ones. The Martha Moxley case took an unexpected turn in 1991. Rumors surfaced that another member of the Kennedy family, William Smith Kennedy, might be connected to the murder. Although these rumors were eventually dismissed, these brought the case back into the public eye. This time around, Michael Skakel became a central figure in the investigation. Interestingly, it was the Skakel family themselves who inadvertently reignited interest in the case. Rushton Skakel, the father of Michael and Thomas, hired private investigators in an attempt to clear his family's name. He likely hoped they would uncover information that would divert suspicion towards other suspects. However, this move backfired spectacularly. 2 private investigators were brought in: Jim Murphy, a former FBI agent with experience, and his assistant, Willis Billy Krebs, who had previously served as a lieutenant with the NYPD. During their investigation, Murphy and Krebs interviewed Thomas and Michael Skakel about their whereabouts on the night of Martha's murder. The interviews revealed inconsistencies in the brothers' stories. It turned out both boys had lied to the police about their activities that night. Thomas Skakel admitted that he lied about the time he last saw Martha. He now claimed it was closer to 10 p.m., not 9:30 p.m. as he initially had told the police. Even more shockingly, Thomas revealed that he and Martha had engaged in mutual self-pleasure outside his house before he went inside. According to investigator Billy Krebs, Thomas became emotional during this confession, even breaking down in tears. However, Thomas's lawyer abruptly ended the interview before he could elaborate further. Meanwhile, Michael Skakel also contradicted his previous story. He admitted that he hadn't gone straight to bed after returning home from his cousin's house around 11 p.m. Instead, Michael confessed to climbing a tree outside Martha Moxley's bedroom window and then engaging in self-pleasure. These revelations sent shockwaves through the investigation. Author and journalist Dominic Dune, who had been following the case closely, obtained a copy of the investigator's report. He shared it with State Inspector Frank Garr, a former detective on the Moxley case, who had always harbored suspicions about Michael Skakel. Garr's suspicions, once dismissed, were now reignited with renewed vigor thanks to the bombshell information in the report. In 1998, a special type of grand jury with only one juror and an investigator was assembled to take a fresh look at the Martha Moxley case. After a thorough examination of all the evidence, Judge George Thim determined there was enough to formally accuse Michael Skakel of murder and bring him to trial. On January 19, 2000, Michael was charged for Martha's murder. Adding weight to the case against Michael were testimonies from several of his former classmates at Elon School, a specialized institution designed to help troubled teenagers. These classmates claimed that Michael himself had confessed the crime to them while they were all students there. One such former classmate, Gregory Coleman, provided particularly damning testimony during a pretrial hearing in June of 2000. Coleman stated that Michael had bragged that he was going to get away with murder because he was a Kennedy. Coleman went on to allege that Michael had described making unwanted advances towards a girl who was not complying, and in a fit of rage, drove her skull in. These statements directly linked Michael to the violent act that took Martha Moxley's life. Unfortunately, Coleman wouldn't be able to repeat his testimony in court. He died tragically of a heroin overdose in August of 2001, leaving his pretrial statement as his only contribution to the case against Michael Skakel. The prosecution's case against Michael gained further momentum with the discovery of a crucial piece of evidence: recordings Michael had made in 1997 with a ghostwriter for his autobiography, titled Dead Man Talking, A Kennedy Cousin Comes Clean. The recordings seemed to contradict Michael's claims of innocence. One particularly damaging excerpt from the autobiography played during the trial revealed Michael admitting to his state on the night of the murder. He spoke of being intoxicated due to alcohol and marijuana, and feeling aroused. The prosecution further highlighted a specific section of the recording, where Michael described his panic upon seeing Martha's mother, Dorothy Moxley, at his doorstep the following morning. According to the recording, Michael had thought to himself, "Did they see me last night?" Michael claimed he was concerned the Moxleys might have witnessed him engaging in private activity on their tree. The prosecution, however, argued that this was a veiled confession, suggesting Michael's true fear was being seen attacking Martha with a golf club. Michael's defense team countered by emphasizing the lack of physical evidence directly linking him to the crime scene. They also reiterated his alibi for the time frame when Martha was believed to be murdered. Despite the defense's arguments, the prosecution painted a compelling picture. They portrayed Michael as a jealous teenager, enraged by a romantic rejection, fueled by drugs and alcohol, who also had access to the murder weapon. The jury found this scenario convincing. On June 8, 2002, after a long and emotional trial, they delivered a guilty verdict. Michael was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. Even behind bars, Michael wouldn't give up. His lawyers and supporters continued to fight for his conviction to be overturned, filing a total of 4 appeals. Unfortunately for Michael, all of these appeals were denied. However, a glimmer of hope emerged on October 23, 2013. A judge ruled that Michael deserved a new trial because his original defense attorney, Mickey Sherman, hadn't provided an adequate defense. This legal concept is called constitutionally deficient representation, meaning Michael's lawyer hadn't done a good enough job according to the law. As a result of this decision, Michael was released on bail on November 21, 2013.
Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel walked out of court today a free man after more than a decade in prison. He was released on $1.2 million bail. Skakel was convicted in the 1975 murder of a neighbor in Connecticut when both were teenagers. But a judge threw out the conviction and granted him a new trial.
Relatives and supporters applauded when the judge approved bail. Michael Skakel did not speak to reporters, but his lawyer, Hubert Santos, did.
There were 2 tragedies that occurred in Greenwich, Connecticut in 1975. The first was, of course, the murder of Martha Moxley. The second great tragedy occurred in a courthouse in Norwalk, Connecticut in 2002, when Michael was convicted of the murder of Martha Moxley, a murder he did not commit.
Prosecutors, however, were determined to see Michael back behind bars. They appealed the judge's decision, arguing that Michael had received a fair trial the first time around. On December 30, 2016, they achieved a small victory when Connecticut's Supreme Court agreed, ruling in a 4-3 decision that Mickey Sherman's representation had been adequate. But the legal battle wasn't over yet.
Give us the nuts and bolts of this reversal. Why now?
Well, this is really just such an astonishing long-term saga. The short version is that Michael Skakel was convicted in 2002. Then many years later, just earlier in 2016, the Intermediate Appeals Court in Connecticut overturned the conviction on the very unusual ground that Skakel had been denied effective assistance of counsel, that his lawyer, Mickey Sherman, was so incompetent that Skakel didn't get a fair trial. The Supreme Court of Connecticut today said that conclusion was wrong, his defense was adequate, so the conviction is reinstated. I think, having sat through that whole trial, the Connecticut Supreme Court today was correct. Mickey Sherman made some difficult, perhaps incorrect, decisions about how to defend Michael Skakel, but the reason Michael Skakel was convicted is because he actually was guilty, in my opinion, and I think that's the correct result in this case.
In a surprising turn of events, the Supreme Court reversed its own decision on May 4, 2018. With another 4-3 vote, the court concluded that Mickey Sherman had indeed failed Michael by not properly presenting evidence to support his alibi during the original trial. This meant Michael could potentially face another trial. The possibility of a retrial presented a significant challenge for the prosecution. Time had not been kind to their case. Crucial witnesses had died or their memories faded, making it difficult to build a strong case against Skakel. These factors made a retrial a very real possibility, but a very difficult one for the prosecution to pursue. On October 30th, 2020, a state prosecutor made a significant announcement. After careful consideration and review of the case, they decided Michael would not be retried for Martha Moxley's murder. The murder charge against him was officially dropped.
Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel will not face a second trial in the 1975 murder of Martha Moxley. A Connecticut prosecutor announced at a hearing this morning that he could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Back in 2002, Skakel was convicted of killing Moxley in Greenwich. At the time of her death, they were both 15 years old, but in 2018, his conviction was overturned.
This decision left Martha Moxley's family heartbroken. Her mother Dorothy and brother John remained steadfast in their belief that Skakel was guilty. Dorothy, in particular, couldn't shake the feeling that Skakel's wealth and powerful family connections were the only reason he was a free man. However, there were those who believed in Michael's innocence. His cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., stood by him throughout the ordeal. In fact, Kennedy even wrote a book titled Framed: Why Michael Skakel Spent Over a Decade in Prison for a Murder He Didn't Commit. It was published in 2016. The Martha Moxley murder case remains unsolved to date and continues to spark debate.
And now to that 33-year-old cold case in Orange County, now solved.
The Orange County Sheriff announcing investigators have now identified the remains of a woman found killed in 1990.
In a small town in North Carolina, a chilling mystery that baffled investigators for over 3 decades has finally been unraveled. It all began in 1990 when the lifeless body of a young woman was discovered in Hillsborough. Her identity remained a puzzle, and her death, initially deemed unclear, left detectives stumped. Despite numerous efforts over the years, including facial reconstructions and digital sketches, her name remained unknown. But in a remarkable turn of events in September of 2023, a breakthrough emerged, shedding light on the enigmatic figure known as the I-40 Jane Doe. This revelation not only brought closure to a long-standing case, but also revealed the tragic fate of the I-40 Jane Doe, whose story had been shrouded in mystery for far too long. As we dig deeper into the case, let's try to explore 2 important questions. What led to the breakthrough in identifying the I-40 Jane Doe after more than 3 decades? How did the tragic fate of I-40 Jane Doe finally come to light, revealing the secrets of her mysterious disappearance and death? Let's delve into the details of this case. It was on September 19, 1990, while a road crew was cleaning up along Interstate 40 in North Carolina, they stumbled upon a grim discovery: the badly decomposed body of a young woman. She was found partially clothed, lying about 15 feet down an embankment near the New Hope Church Road exit. Her body had been lying there for nearly a week before being noticed. The Orange County Sheriff at the time, Lindy Pendergrass, alerted the media, hinting at the possibility of foul play. Back then, Dr. John Butts, who recorded the death of the unidentified body in 1990, marked it as undetermined. The young woman found near Interstate 40 had unique features. Her originally brown hair was dyed a strawberry blonde, reaching down to her shoulders and frosted. She stood about 5 foot 3 inches tall, weighing around 115 pounds. Investigators estimated her age to be between 15 to 25 years old. Examining her dental records revealed interesting details. All 4 wisdom teeth were still below the surface, and one tooth was in an unusual position called a lingual crossbite, with 3 others leaning the same way. She had cavities in 3 teeth and dental restorations in 3 others. A 3-inch scar on her lower right abdomen indicated she had had an appendectomy in the past. Surprisingly, there were no signs of childbirth, breaks, or fractures in her bones. Toxicology reports also had revealed that there were no drugs in her system. She was given the name the I-40 Jane, considering the fact that she was found near the I-40 highway. She had been dead for about 4 to 6 days before she was discovered on September 19, 1990. She was found wearing a distinct pink sweatshirt, adorned with 3 white rabbits, 2 on bicycles and 1 on a unicycle, and a bra and white socks. She also had a brass bracelet on her left wrist, and a fashion ring on 1 finger. The youthful style of her clothing led police to believe she was likely a teenager. Each and every detail of her appearance and belongings became crucial in unraveling the mystery surrounding her death. The absence of footwear and the peculiar items she wore raised questions about the circumstances leading to her tragic end. X-rays were done, but they didn't show any broken bones, and the examination of the body ruled out death by shooting or stabbing. Even though authorities believed it was a murder, they couldn't officially determine how she died. At best, experts thought she might have been strangled. Investigators looked through missing person reports in the area, hoping to find a match for the victim, but they didn't find any connections. All they had to work with were the victim's clothes, accessories, a few unique features, and the x-rays taken by the medical examiner. Despite the challenges, detectives pressed on, determined to solve the mystery surrounding the young woman's tragic death. Considering the fact that her body was found near the I-40, they speculated she could have come from anywhere between Barstow, California, and Wilmington, North Carolina. This led them to believe she might have been killed elsewhere and brought to where she was found. In late September 1990, witnesses reported a possible sighting of the girl in Alamance County before her murder. They recalled seeing someone matching her description, wearing a pink sweater with rabbits on it. Based on these accounts, a composite sketch was created and published in hopes of identifying her. But unfortunately, no one came forward with a name. Despite these challenges, investigators remained determined to solve the case, tirelessly pursuing leads and gathering evidence to uncover the truth behind the mysterious death of the I-40 Jane Doe. As the investigation unfolded, every detail of her appearance and belongings became crucial in piecing together the events leading to her untimely demise. Despite efforts to figure out who she was and what happened to her, no lead came up. When the victim was murdered in 1990, DNA technology was still new and was not able to identify unknown individuals. So investigators relied on traditional methods, like interviewing witnesses, following leads, and searching missing person reports. They even used forensic facial reconstruction to create a model of her skull, but it didn't yield much. Police suspected a connection between this case and murders committed by a taxi driver. He was arrested in Guilford County, but died as a result of taking his own life before he could be questioned by Orange County officers. His identity was never made public. This led to a dead end in the investigation, leaving detectives searching for other leads to uncover the truth behind Jane Doe's tragic death. Despite relentless efforts by investigators and volunteers, the identity of Jane Doe remained elusive for over 3 decades. In 2018, a digital version of the composite sketch was released to the public, hoping to spark recognition. But no one came forward to identify her. Updated technology allowed for a digital illustration of the deceased to be circulated, yet Jane Doe's identity continued to evade discovery. As the years passed, investigators pursued numerous leads and explored innovative methods to crack the case. They utilized social media platforms to share digital illustrations approximating her appearance. But still, no breakthrough occurred. Despite their unwavering dedication, the victim's identity remained shrouded in mystery. The case eventually went cold, leaving law enforcement frustrated and the community unsettled by the unresolved tragedy. However, the determination to bring closure to the case persisted, with hopes that someday a crucial piece of information would surface, shedding light on the identity of the mysterious Jane Doe and providing answers to the questions that had lingered for so long. After 2 decades of the victim remaining unidentified, a breakthrough finally occurred in 2020 when forensic investigators joined forces with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. Using updated technology, they managed to extract DNA from a degraded hair fragment found on the victim. This DNA was then linked to a paternal cousin of the victim through genealogy databases. In June of 2020, investigator Dylan Hendricks took over the old case. With the help of the State Bureau of Investigation, he sent an old hair sample for DNA testing. When he got the results, he sent them to Leslie Kaufman, an expert in a new method called forensic genealogy. Kaufman used genealogy databases to connect the woman's DNA with possible family members. She found some people who seemed to be her cousins. Investigators then talked to these relatives and found out about a family member no one had heard from in over 30 years. Kaufman's expertise in cases involving unidentified human remains and homicides proved invaluable, as she linked the victim's DNA to potential paternal cousins. Hendricks explained that the DNA showed there should be someone named Lisa in the family tree, but nobody knew where she was. After more DNA tests from other relatives, investigators confirmed they had found the right name for the mysterious woman. As the investigation progressed, interviews were conducted, revealing the existence of a female relative named Lisa Coburn Kessler, who had not been heard from in over 3 decades. This significant breakthrough brought investigators closer to uncovering the identity of the long-unknown victim and provided hope for finally bringing closure to the case. Lisa Coburn Kessler, born in Georgia, led a life shrouded in mystery before tragedy struck. Though her exact birth date remains unknown, she would have been somewhere between 15 to 25 years old in 1990. Details about her upbringing are scarce, leaving much to the imagination. However, what we do know paints a picture of a young woman with a unique charm. Lisa was known for her natural brown hair, which she often dyed a striking strawberry blonde, adding a touch of individuality to her appearance. Yet amidst her aspirations and quirks, Lisa's fate took a tragic turn, forever linking her to the chilling events that unfolded in 1990. No one could have predicted the dark turn her life would take, as the end of her happy times loomed ominously on the horizon. Investigator Hendricks described the discovery of Lisa Kessler's family through DNA as finding a missing piece in the family tree. They then sought DNA from a suspected relative on her mother's side, which further confirmed her identity. Medical examiner specialist Clyde Gibbs updated the NamUs database to reflect that DNA analysis had resolved her case. Now, the chief medical examiner could amend her death certificate with her correct name and other details. Investigators revealed that Kessler's family wasn't aware she was missing when she disappeared. They learned that she had willingly left Georgia for Michigan. When she later left Michigan, her family there thought she had gone back to Georgia, willingly.
All right, so we know that she left willingly from Georgia to go back to Michigan, and when she left Michigan, the family in Michigan believed that she was probably leaving willingly to go back to Georgia. No one ever thought that she was missing.
This discovery shed light on Lisa Kessler's journey and provided closure to her family, finally giving her the recognition and dignity she deserved. Now that Lisa Kessler's identity is known, investigators are focused on finding her killer. North Carolina's lack of a statute of limitations for murder means detectives will persist in their efforts to identify and apprehend the suspect. With the same determination used to uncover Lisa's identity, they aim to apply forensic techniques to pinpoint the perpetrator. The search for justice continues, as investigators remain committed to bringing closure to the case and ensuring that those responsible for Lisa's tragic death are held accountable. Sheriff Blackwood expressed relief that the decades-old mystery of Lisa Kessler's identity had finally been solved, bringing solace to her family. He thanked the investigators, volunteers, and professionals who tirelessly worked on the case, showcasing the power of determination. While the family couldn't bring back their loved one, the identification offered a sense of closure. It was a comfy day in Portland on October 17, 1982, with a light rain shower cooling the city. Michelle Basil, a 13-year-old girl, was also at her home enjoying the day when she suddenly heard the phone ring. It was her 19-year-old sister, Kim Basil, on the line. However, it didn't sound like a pleasant routine.
And she just said that she was in trouble and she needed to come home. She was standing in the shower, so no one would know she was on the phone.
Kim was panicking, and she was in trouble. Michelle listened in horror to her sister's deafening screams and frightened calls for help.
And then someone came in and found out she was on the phone, and they started to violently beat her. And the phone dropped, but it didn't disconnect. And then they started burning her with cigarettes. I could hear begging them to stop burning her. I just listened as long as I could, and then finally someone hung the phone up.
Michelle immediately informed her mother, who was also shook to the core. Although her mother immediately asked police for help, they went on to discard it as a mere runaway case due to her age. And with that, a poor soul lost her life, and law couldn't bring justice for her for 16 years.
I contacted the police and they told me I had to wait the 2 weeks to file a missing person. They considered her a 19-year-old runaway. She was an adult until they had something proving that she was gone. There really was very little investigation.
What happened to Kim Basil? How did she end up in such a horrific state? Kim Basil was born to Carol Basil in Oregon, Portland. She had a calm and peaceful childhood. After 6 years, the family welcomed their second daughter, Michelle. The young and gorgeous teenager was a beauty school student. For several weeks, the family didn't hear from Kim, and they feared the worst. The phone call was a surprise for the family, and it was not good news. To protect and serve was not just on the minds of some of the policemen during the 70s and 80s. Even though it was understood that Kim was in deep trouble, police made no significant moves. It was evident that she was on an open phone line with her sister while she was being viciously beaten. Something was definitely wrong with the entire picture. According to Michelle, Kim sneaked into the shower to call for help. However, Michelle couldn't ask her why or where she was. Someone grabbed Kim, and they began beating her into a pulp. The phone call, however, wasn't disconnected. Someone was cruel enough to cause burns to Kim with cigarettes. During the entire call, Michelle kept pleading with them not to hurt her sister. She tried to be on the phone till the end, until someone hung up the call. That was the last time Kim talked to her family. A year later, the disappearance remained a mystery, and the family didn't know whom to seek help from. They urged the police to look into it, and finally, they began the investigation. They eventually came to a shocking discovery. Kim Basil had been dating Downey Longoria, who was a member of the notorious Mexican mafia. The police sensed foul play. Who are the Longoria family? Did they have something to do with her missing? On October 25, 1983, the Portland police were on a sting operation to catch some drug dealers. They caught a local drug trafficker. He led them to a crucial piece of information they had been looking for a while. The first clue to Kim Basil's disappearance. Detective Joe Goodale questioned the informant, and the clues from him led them to Esther Benita Cahoot and John Santmeyer. They were the eldest members of the infamous mafia family in Colorado, and they had always been connected to the young people to plan and execute crimes. If someone was seen as a potential threat who would expose their secrets, they would immediately eliminate them. For them, it was a ruthless routine, and they were insanely good at it. Kim was also part of their grand plan to loot a shop. As a part of this plan, which they had successfully executed, about $250,000 worth of merchandise was stolen from Fred Meyer. Around this time, the visuals that were recorded by the surveillance cameras came to light, and Kim, having been captured in these camera visuals, was certainly petrified that she was going to jail.
I think at one point during this investigation, the store informed me that they believe they may have lost up to $250,000 worth of merchandise before they had figured this out. They set up a surveillance with video surveillance and captured this on film.
Afraid of the consequences, she went to the Longoria family to seek protection and refuge for her and her family. She even threatened to reveal their secrets if she was not taken care of. From cocaine trafficking, safe breaking to simple thefts, Longoria family was at the peak of its criminal activities. Kim, who was still a teenager, might have been careless and naive in choosing them as friends. It was never the right way, choosing to deal with such shady people. The only loophole police could use was the well-known Longorian family tactic. They had a habit of recording conversations with other criminals to use as bargaining chips if they ever faced legal trouble.
They like to tape record other criminals and use that for barter should they ever be arrested. And instead of going to jail, they wanted to trade something.
They preferred negotiation over facing the consequences of their actions. When it came to the inquiry on Kim's case, since the Longoria family had been looking for ways to avoid jail time by offering something valuable in return, Detective Goodale came up with a master plan. In November 1983, he teamed up with Linda Estes, a detective from a neighboring county who had connections to the Longoria family. Together, they approached Downey Longoria, who was also a member of the Longoria family. They were hoping to convince him to find evidence against either John Santmeyer or Esther Cahoot, Downey's cousin. In the Longoria family, John Santmeyer was the first person in command, and Esther came next. To their surprise, Downey didn't hesitate. As soon as Kim Basil's name was mentioned, he repeated that he was innocent. Yet in a sudden turn, he agreed to cooperate with the police investigation. He agreed to participate in wiretapped conversations, offering to make recorded phone calls to both suspects and potential witnesses in the case who may have valuable information. Downey called Esther as the police waited, expecting a grand reveal from her. However, she remained tight-lipped.
Lawyer, said that you said that I killed that broad, that you had the police
That's a story. That's a story, swear to God. That's absolutely made up story. You have nothing to worry about. You did absolutely nothing. I have no contact with you or nothing.
That's not the point. I don't want them to put a bum beef on you, man.
Around this time, some unsettling rumors about Kim's death started circulating. Her body was rumored to have been disposed of using a wood chipper. Although it sounded like baseless rumors, Detective Goodale went behind the clue and interviewed the shopkeeper who had sold the wood chipper.
And interviewed the owner of this wood chipper and looked over the grounds. And I could envision finding pieces of body parts that have been through a chipper out here. We never did, thank goodness.
But that turned out to be just another dead end. Despite their efforts, Goodale and Estes uncovered nothing substantial. There was no sign of Kim's body, no tangible evidence to support the rumors. However, what was left behind was the frustrating lack of cooperation from the Longoria family. 8 years later, on a winter afternoon, a new turn arrived when John Santmeyer of the Longoria family requested a meeting with Detective Gray Muncie. He was at the Clackamas jail due to a probation violation. It was an unexpected meeting, and he decided to come clean about the 1982 murder of Kim Basil.
What I do remember, the night, I'm not sure of the night that it was. I was awakened by Esther.
The detective understood the tight-knit group was now in a turmoil, and Santmeyer was here to trade information to protect himself. He revealed that Esther and Roy from the family were involved in Kim's murder. Esther requested Santmeyer to help her out, and he helped to dispose of the body.
She had asked me to help move the body, for which she had already called her brother and her son, which is Roy and John, and she had showed me the body, for which down toward the lower part of the body, which would have been the groin area, was a big wet spot, to where I automatically assumed that she was dead already.
Kim was wrapped in a sleeping bag and was carried to the pickup truck. Roy and John then departed with the truck, having Kim's cold and lifeless body hidden in the rear. It seemed like Santmeyer might have hid crucial parts where his involvement was prominent. The detectives, however, needed evidence before finding whether he had a crucial role in the murder. 2 weeks later, detectives uncovered yet another potential break within the Longoria family. This time it involved Esther Cahoot's nephew, Benny Munoz, who found himself behind bars on a charge of attempted murder. However, what caught the detectives' attention was Munoz's apparent eagerness to strike a deal, seemingly willing to offer up information about his own aunt in exchange for leniency. When Benny stepped forward, it shed more light on Kim's body and its whereabouts. He revealed details about a property owned by his Aunt Esther. Over the years, he had heard whispers of a young girl being murdered and hidden somewhere on that property.
I heard him talking to somebody on the phone about property up in Friend that my mom and dad was selling. That's how I knew that she was going to be moved up to there. I was the one that dug that hole.
Did you dig it for this reason?
No.
Why'd you dig it?
For an outhouse. I thought it was going to be used for a grave.
Benny even went as far as drawing a map, pinpointing the location where he believed the body was buried. Benny's description led investigators to a secluded area outside Portland. With a search warrant in hand, the detectives embarked on a mission to locate Kim Basil's body. After an extensive search spanning 3 hours, detectives made a grim discovery. Human remains concealed within a sleeping bag. Through dental records, forensic experts confirmed the identity of the recovered remains as Kim Basil's. Detective Michael Gates now had the hard task to reach out to the victim's family and deliver the devastating news. After 16 years of uncertainty and anguish, the truth about Kim's fate finally came to light. As part of the ensuing investigation, numerous individuals also expressed fears of facing a similar fate to Kim's if they spoke up. Another development came forth when Frank, a cousin within the Longoria clan, who had just been released on bail, was approached by Detective Michael Gates. Frank requested to speak with his wife before making a decision. Frank returned home and discussed the matter with his wife, who advised him to do what he believed was right. The following day, Frank returned to Michael and expressed his willingness to sit down for an interview with the detective, which the detective duly ensured to have it recorded. During the interview, Frank revealed that John Santmeyer had confessed to smothering Kim with a pillow on a couch.
I was drinking with this associate, John Santmeyer, and he was a little intoxicated, and he started talking about how he smothered her.
When you say her, how do you know it was Kim?
He said her name. He said that he smothered Kim on the couch of my aunt's home, and that she was fighting prayer, and he said he took her to the mountains and put her in a pre-dug hole.
The information provided another crucial piece to the puzzle. Frank underwent a polygraph test regarding Santmeyer's confession and passed without any indication of deception, adding some credibility to his testimony. Despite John Santmeyer's arrest for the murder of Kim Basil on March 19, 2000, Michael Gates remained determined to uncover the full extent of those involved in the crime. He suspected that Esther Cahoot, second in command of the Longoria family, played a significant role in the tragic events surrounding Kim's death. While detained in the county jail, authorities intensified their interrogation of John Santmeyer. The police's belief was that both Santmeyer and Cahoot had subjected Kim to hours of torment and abuse before her death. Santmeyer confessed that Kim was restrained in a sleeping bag when he and Esther made the fateful decision to end her life.
After Kim looked at me and said, "Hey, let's just do it this way." She's in the sleeping bag. They brought me into the front room, showed me Kim was in the sleeping bag, all zipped up. The only part that was showing was her head.
Santmeyer revealed that Esther wanted Kim dead to show off to Danny Longoria. And when Kim threatened about revealing their dirty secrets, Esther thought it was the right time to eliminate her. Subsequently, Esther Cahoot faced charges of first-degree murder. However, she opted to plead guilty to manslaughter, resulting in a 9-year prison sentence. In contrast, John Santmeyer pled guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 10 years. On November 4, 2005, Esther Cahoot was released. After being released from prison, Esther went on to live with her sister in a trailer. After years of uncertainty, the mysterious truth about Kim's murder was finally revealed. However, comprehensive criminal records and foul play involving the Mafia family was something that remained yet to be fully disclosed. Kim's family went through years of torment before finally finding closure. However, the criminals involved were granted parole, while some felt that the gravity of the crime was still not inflicted.
This is somewhat unusual for us. because it was so clear in this case and these circumstances that's why we were just scratching our head.
Something that doesn't happen very often either.
No, very, very rare.
On November 28, 1984, Gary Kurgan went missing after leaving a Baton Rouge bar known as the Night Spot Lounge on Plank Road in Louisiana. He was last seen with Layla Erica Mullah, a young exotic dancer. At the time, Kurgan had $2,000 in cash with him, but then he vanished without a trace. His disappearance became even more suspicious when his pink Cadillac, a late model, turned up abandoned in Metairie, Louisiana. Inside the trunk of the car, there were pools of blood, adding a grim clue to the mystery. What happened to Gary Kurgan after that night? And what role did Erica Mullah play in his disappearance? Gary Stephen Kurgan, born on May 1, 1950, was more than just a name in a cold case file. With brown hair and eyes, standing 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighing 170 pounds, he was a man of presence. His life story wasn't just about him. It involved his family, especially his brother, Ted Kurgan, with whom he shared a profound bond. They weren't just siblings, they were partners both in life and business. Ted, reflecting on their relationship, shared how Gary stepped into the role of a father figure after their dad passed away just after Ted was born. This deep bond fueled their journey into adulthood, where they became partners in the fast food industry. The Kurgan brothers ventured into business together, with Gary leading the charge on a groundbreaking deal with Sonic to open multiple outlets in the New Orleans area, a bold move for the time. Gary's personal life was just as filled with commitments and love. He was married to Susie, and together they had a son named Wade, painting a picture of a family man who cherished his time at home. Ted, on the other hand, was single, and together the brothers enjoyed a prosperous and close-knit family dynamic. Their business circle expanded when Larry Tucker, another Sonic Drive-In owner, and his daughter Memory joined the Kurgans. They were planning to expand their Sonic business into Baton Rouge, leading them to rent an apartment there for convenience. However, they ended up sharing an apartment at Gary's residence. Gary Kurgan lived a life marked by ambition and achievement, and he wasn't shy about enjoying the fruits of his success. On the night of November 28, 1984, a phone call lit up the excitement in the Kurgan household. Gary had just clinched a deal in Mississippi that promised a significant expansion for their restaurant business, signaling a pivotal moment. He was brimming with excitement as he shared the news with Ted, his brother and business partner. Terry was so eager to discuss this triumph that he planned to head straight to Ted's place to celebrate their success. However, the night took an unexpected turn. Gary never arrived at Ted's house. As hours passed, what began as a missed celebration morphed into concerns. Ted, who had fallen asleep waiting, woke up to the realization that Gary had not shown up, an oddity given Gary's reliability and their plans. The worry wasn't confined to Ted alone. Susie, Gary's wife, was overwhelmed with unease, feeling in her gut that something was terribly wrong. In an effort to trace Gary's whereabouts, Ted initiated a call to Larry and all their restaurant locations, seeking any clue of Gary's presence or his activities that night. This was because Gary, known for his dependability, had also told Larry about his intentions to visit Ted. The situation escalated quickly from confusion to a dire sense of emergency, enveloping everyone close to Gary in a cloud of shock and disbelief. Larry, who had shared many professional and personal moments with Gary, felt particularly upended, describing the experience as a jarring blow to their sense of normalcy. Ted Kurgan transformed into a man on a mission, following his brother Gary's mysterious disappearance. His search was exhaustive, covering every possible location in Baton Rouge where Gary might have gone. Ted visited stores, eateries, and any place Gary frequented, driven by the unsettling feeling that Gary had simply vanished into thin air. Ted, holding on to the faint hope that the situation was a mere accident or misdirection, couldn't help but fear for the worst. He knew the local terrain well, aware that one could easily end up lost or in danger, especially in the remote swamps of Louisiana. Ted and Gary were no strangers to law enforcement, both serving as commissioned deputies, which gave Ted a unique perspective and network to leverage during his search. A turning point in the investigation came with the discovery of a piece of paper bearing the name Erica. This clue surfaced in the Baton Rouge apartment that Gary shared with his business partner Larry Tucker. Larry had initially discarded the note, thinking it unimportant, only to realize its potential later in connection to Gary's disappearance. The revelation hinted at a side of Gary's life that was unknown to his family and friends, suggesting a possible entanglement with another woman. Driven by this lead, Ted's quest led him to a nightclub named The Hotspot, where a case of mistaken identity occurred. This encounter steered Ted to the realization that Gary had been seen with a dancer named Erica, now the central figure in his desperate search.
Well, I walked in and one of the dancers looked at me and said, "Hi, Gary," which was interesting because Gary and I looked enough alike that that's understandable. I said, "No, I'm Ted. I'm Gary's brother. Have you seen him?" And she said, "Yeah, he was here last night."
The police, piecing together these findings, identified Erica as Layla Mullah, a 19-year-old exotic dancer living with her boyfriend, Ronald Dunnigan. The urgency of the situation escalated, prompting law enforcement to investigate their residence. Ted, fueled by a mix of hope and dread, insisted on being part of the operation, clinging to the slim hope of finding Gary alive, perhaps in distress but salvageable. However, the scene at the duplex extinguished any such hopes. The discovery of blood and violently damaged interiors was chilling. Ted described the events as thus.
There was blood everywhere. There were parts of the walls that looked like someone had beat them with a hammer, and that's when I knew. For sure. Well, I knew Gary wasn't coming back.
This gruesome find marked a significant grim turn in the search for Gary Kurgan, shifting the narrative from one of search and rescue to confronting a potential heinous crime. The long-awaited breakthrough in Gary Kurgan's case came with the discovery of his car, abandoned in a business parking lot, its interior stained with blood. Ted recalled the chilling words of the crime investigator.
Crime investigator said, "What you're looking at is someone died in the trunk of that car."
Gary's brand new Cadillac had sat untouched for 5 days. This grim finding shattered the glimmer of hope held by Gary's wife, Susie, and their community. As members of the Latter-day Saints, they sought comfort and support from their church during this dark time. The reality of Gary's fate became undeniable, a bitter pill that Ted had to deliver to the family, marking a definitive end to any hope of Gary's return. The investigation intensified, with the focus on Layla Mullah, the last known person to have seen Gary. Mullah, along with her boyfriend Ronald Dunnigan, quickly became the prime suspects, especially after the discovery of blood both in Gary's car and in the home Mullah shared with Dunnigan. The couple's sudden flight only fueled suspicions, leading law enforcement on a chase that stretched from Baton Rouge to Las Vegas. In an unexpected turn, Mullah's attempts to blend into Las Vegas by acquiring an escort license led to her detention by local police, thanks to a Baton Rouge warrant for her as a material witness. Dunnigan, loitering near the sheriff's station under the guise of waiting for Mullah, was also detained due to an unrelated bench warrant for a traffic violation. Amidst legal loopholes and jurisdictional challenges, Ted Kurgan facilitated the rapid deployment of detectives to Las Vegas by chartering a private jet, determined to leverage Mullah's arrest as an opportunity to crack the case wide open. Mullah, under the pressure of interrogation, implicated Dunnigan in Gary's death, suggesting it was an accident, but acknowledging that Gary did not deserve to die. The investigation took another dramatic turn with the discovery of Mullah's diary, which Ted stumbled upon in the couple's Las Vegas apartment. The diary contained chilling entries that pointed at plans to assault Gary. This evidence, coupled with the physical clues and Mullah's testimony, seemed to solidify the case against the couple. However, the case faced a significant setback when a new district attorney, Brian Bush, decided to release Dunnigan and Mullah due to the lack of a physical body and the challenges of prosecuting a murder case without one. This decision, influenced by the limitations of forensic technology at the time and the legal strategy employed by Mullah, left the Kurgan family and the prosecution team in disbelief and despair. Kurgan's body was never found, and he was declared legally dead in 1986. Kurgan's case eventually went cold. Layla Mullah, who initially went by the name Erica, had a life that read like a paradoxical tale. At 19 years old, she had an impressive background as an honor student, a skilled violinist, and a track star in her home state of Ohio. Despite coming from a wealthy family, Layla's life took a drastic turn as she grappled with substance abuse and adopted a rebellious, wild child persona, leading her to flee a rehab facility and find refuge in Louisiana. In this new chapter of her life, Layla chose paths far from her achievements, working as a stripper and prostitute. Her living conditions mirrored her tumultuous life, sharing a dilapidated duplex with Ronald Dunnigan, her boyfriend, who was notably older and led a life marked by eccentricity and adversity. Ron, who earned a meager living as a part-time street clown, starkly contrasted with Layla's youth and beauty. Despite his lack of financial stability and education, Ron held a dominant position in their relationship, acting as the so-called protector Layla sought in her chaotic world. Their unconventional bond was underpinned by a mutual dependency. Layla's nighttime activities funded their life, while Ron provided a sense of security, albeit in a skewed and dysfunctional manner. Gary Kurgan, a regular client of Layla's, unwittingly became entangled in this volatile relationship. Layla Mullah and Ron Dunnigan eluded capture for 3 decades. Their lives continued as if untouched by the past. However, the tides turned with advancements in DNA testing and a revitalized cold case unit in Baton Rouge, keen on resolving lingering mysteries. Memory Tucker, linked to the case through her father Larry Tucker, played a pivotal role in reopening the investigation. Now a district attorney investigator, she initiated a thorough review of the case, tracking down old witnesses and leveraging modern forensic science. A DNA sample from Gary's son Wade confirmed that the blood that had been found in the trunk of the abandoned Cadillac was indeed Gary's, cementing the foundation for a renewed prosecution effort. Ted Kurgan, who had tirelessly tracked Dunnigan and Mullah over the years, knew exactly where to find them. Mulla had transitioned to a new life as a nurse in New York, while Dunnigan, living off a fraudulent disability claim, lingered in Louisiana, still fixated on Mulla. When authorities finally moved in, Ted was there in disguise, watching the arrest unfold. Mulla's arrest and subsequent interrogation peeled back the layers of manipulation and fear that had defined her relationship with Dunnigan. She portrayed herself as a victim of Dunnigan's threats, implicating him as the mastermind behind Gary Kiran's murder. Dunnigan's bizarre control extended to psychological manipulation, creating an omnipresent watcher, Squeaky, to keep Mulla in line. Her diary entries mingled with this delusion provided chilling insights into their warped relationship and sinister activities. In her confession, Mulla revealed the gruesome details of the crime. According to her, Dunnigan had poisoned Gary, later dismembering his body to dispose of it in a calculated and cold-blooded manner.
It's true about the wine. It was tainted. Dunnigan was hiding in the closet. Gary started to, and Dunnigan drug him out of the room. It just gets me so sad. I know I do. We need to know why he went into the back. He cut him in half, okay? He cut him in half.
Despite her initial reluctance to testify, the gravity of the evidence and her own admissions under interrogation painted a harrowing picture of the murder. Prosecutors, armed with Mulla's testimony and the accumulated evidence, finally had the leverage needed to ensure justice. Mulla accepted a plea deal on May 15, 2014, which led to her sentencing of 30 years, while Dunnigan received a life sentence. The Gary Kiran murder case, a narrative spanning over 3 decades, reached a semblance of closure, offering a bittersweet solace to his family. Gary's son, Wade Kiran, had this to say.
It feels amazing to have some closure for the case and to have some justice.
Dana Cummings, Assistant District Attorney for East Baton Rouge Parish, acknowledged Ted's pivotal role, expressing gratitude for his persistence in pursuing the truth and ensuring that justice was served. This acknowledgement underlines the impact of individual determination in the long journey through the legal system. Ted Kiran's reaction to the case's resolution was one of raw, unfiltered relief and triumph. His words, "After 30 years, I got you, you son of a bitch," encapsulated the depth of his long-held frustrations and the satisfaction of finally having seen the perpetrators held accountable. Ted also had this to say.
I've been mad for 30 years now, and I'm just angry that she took my best friend from me.
However, for Ted, the story doesn't end with the sentencing of Mulla and Dunnigan. He remains committed to finding his brother's remains, a quest that presents not only a search for physical closure, but also his emotional journey towards peace and finality.
All those other years when it was kind of a factor in our lives, it was always just, I had my mother stolen from me. Then when I went back and I thought about, well, this guy held a gun to my mother's head, made her have with him, and then killed her. And what was that like for her? Which, I never thought about that for 30 years.
On May 10th, 1970, Albert Morby, a school teacher, returned home to his family in Gormley Village, Ontario, in Canada. But what awaited him wasn't peace, but rather a nightmare. 34-year-old Doreen Morby, his wife, lay lifeless in the living room with their helpless 21-month-old son trapped under her body. The horror didn't stop there. Just 13 days later, a similar crime ripped through the nearby town of Palgrave. The victim this time, 38-year-old Helen Ferguson. The police scrambled to find a connection, but the trail ultimately went cold. The case remained unsolved for years, leaving a cloud of fear and unanswered questions hanging heavy in the air. Then, in a strange twist, a development emerged that would finally bring the truth to light. What was this development? And how did it solve the long-forgotten murders? Doreen June Sidor Morby was born on April 25, 1936. Unfortunately, details about her childhood years remain unknown. Fast forward to the year 1970. Doreen was now a nurse and had found love with a school teacher named Albert J. Morby. Together, they built a life as husband and wife, and their family grew with the arrival of their son, Brent. The young couple lived in a modern 2-story house just outside Gormley Village, which was a charming community about 30 miles north of Toronto. Life seemed perfect, a picture of domestic bliss. But as fate would have it, their happiness wasn't meant to last. On the morning of May 6, 1970, sometime after 10 o'clock, an unfamiliar car pulled into Doreen's driveway. A man emerged confidently, his steps purposeful, as he marched up the gravel path. The man was of average height and build, with a clean-cut appearance. His features were unremarkable except for his slightly prominent ears. He wore a casual outfit, a checkered shirt paired with a short jacket and slacks. People who saw him later described him as a chameleon, someone who could easily blend into any crowd. Doreen, with her characteristic openness, wouldn't have felt any particular alarm when the knock came at her door. However, what the stranger said to convince her to let him inside the house remains a mystery. Perhaps he simply requested to use the phone, or maybe he fabricated a more elaborate story. We will likely never know for sure. After he managed to get inside, it is believed that he persuaded Doreen to cooperate by showing her a handgun. He might have used Brent, the 21-month-old toddler, as the threat of harm to either him, her, or both to make her obey. What came next would haunt the minds of everyone who cared about her, as well as those who barely knew her. Doreen was forced into the bedroom where she was physically assaulted without mercy. Then, as she thought the nightmare might be ending when she was allowed to pick up Brent and partially dress, she was cruelly shot in the back. Injured and bleeding, she had tried to crawl away, still holding Brent in her arms. But the assailant shot her 5 more times in the back of her head. She had instinctively raised her hands in a futile attempt to shield herself, resulting in both of her index fingers being shot through. Brent, fortunately, was unharmed, but trapped beneath his mother's corpse. After locking the front door behind him, the assailant had made sure to leave minimal evidence of his presence. As the heartless stranger retreated down the gravel driveway, he left behind a scene of absolute horror, as Doreen's lifeless body remained cradling her son, even in death. Albert Morby walked through his front door after a long day of classes, but the sight that greeted him wasn't the usual warm welcome of home. Instead, he was left frozen, still, in the doorway. Sprawled on the living room floor lay his wife Doreen. Panic clawed at his throat as he rushed to her side. Thankfully, their young son was safe and sound. Wasting no time, Albert had dialed the police. Uniformed officers swarmed the scene, their faces grim as they had begun their investigation. The tranquility of their sleepy rural town, Gormley, had been shattered by this sudden violence. A meticulous examination of the crime scene revealed some unsettling details. The murder weapon was a rare type of revolver, a .22 caliber with a larger ammunition chamber than usual, holding 9 bullets. But the killer wasn't careless. He had carefully wiped down surfaces to remove any fingerprints. Even the shell casings had vanished without a trace. The only oddity in this calculated crime was the locked front door. The most disturbing aspect of the murder, however, was its randomness. There were no signs of a struggle, no indication that Doreen had been stalked or threatened. As far as anyone could tell, she had simply been going about her day when a stranger approached her house, knocked on the door, and ended her life in a senseless act of violence. The police were baffled by the seemingly random act of violence. They had a locked house, a missing murder weapon, and a seemingly random victim. It was a puzzle with no clear pieces. And as they grappled with the unanswered questions, they had no idea that an even darker chapter was about to unfold. 13 days had crawled by, thick with tension and unanswered questions. Then, on May 19, 1970, just a few miles east in Palgrave, Ontario, a chilling echo of the Gormley tragedy ripped through another quiet neighborhood. Here, too, a young family's life was shattered by violence, and once again, a child witnessed the horror firsthand. The victim this time was Helen Ferguson, a 38-year-old nurse. Like Albert, Helen's husband Russell was also a teacher. 9-year-old Dale, Helen and Russell's son, was home that day as he was suffering from a case of mumps. His mother was at home to take care of him. The day unfolded normally until shortly after lunch, when the family dog's barking cut through the afternoon quiet. A car pulling into the driveway, followed by a knock on the door. It sent a ripple of curiosity through the house. Dale, assuming the visitor wasn't for him, continued watching television, while his mother went to answer. When she returned, she was followed by a stranger, a man Dale had never seen before. Helen explained to Dale that the man had a sick child in the car and needed directions to the hospital. Following this, Helen and the stranger disappeared upstairs, and Dale went back to his program. An hour had passed, punctuated only by the sounds of the television. Then, 3 loud bangs shattered the peaceful afternoon. Moments later, the stranger reappeared, racing through the hallway towards the front door. A chilling detail caught Dale's eye. The man paused for a moment, wiping something off the doorknob. Dale waited until the sounds of the car speeding away reached his ears. He then called out for his mother, his voice echoing, unanswered in the emptiness. There, in the hallway, laid Helen, her body bathed in a pool of blood. Unable to bear the sight any longer, Dale scrambled for the phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. At the same time, his father, Russell Ferguson, pulled into the driveway, unaware of the nightmare that awaited him inside. He would soon be met with a scene of unimaginable horror: the discovery of his wife's murder and the sight of his traumatized son. Police cars soon swarmed the Ferguson residence, and officers cordoned off the area. The investigation had started that same day. A careful search revealed a terrible truth. The crime scene looked just like the one where Doreen was killed. Both Helen and Doreen had been viciously attacked. The way they were shot was almost the same as well. 2 bullets in the head and 1 in the back. It was like the killer was leaving a morbid calling card. Also, just like before, there were no empty bullet casings to be found, and no fingerprints anywhere. Back then, figuring out someone's DNA from a crime scene wasn't even an option, but the investigators had collected some other evidence during their investigation. A sample of the attacker's bodily fluids recovered from the defiled victims. When they had it tested, they learned that the killer had a specific blood type, type A secretor. Then came a sickening realization. This blood type matched the killer from Gormley exactly. It became increasingly clear this wasn't a random attack, but the work of a cunning serial killer. The peaceful towns of Gormley and Palgrave were now connected by a trail of blood, and the fear of another attack hung heavy in the air. There was a glimmer of hope, though. Unlike the first crime scene, this time they had a witness, young Dale Ferguson. He bravely told the police about the man he saw, the one the newspapers would soon call the .22 caliber killer. Dale described him as having a dark complexion, somewhere between 35 and 40 years old, of average height, and driving a beige Rambler car, possibly a 1964-65 model. He mentioned that he had only seen the man for a brief moment, so some details might be off. Armed with this information and a sketch of the suspect based on Dale's description, the investigators launched a massive manhunt, the biggest Ontario had ever seen at the time. One of the officers involved in the initial task force investigating these murders was a young constable named Don McNeil, who would later become a veteran detective inspector. Despite the intense investigation, with hundreds of tips pouring in every day and having over 2,000 suspects checked out, by the end of 1970, they were met with a dead end. The trail had gone cold, leaving the two killings unsolved and a community gripped by fear. 25 years passed with no answers in the Helen and Doreen murders. The towns of Gormley and Palgrave were left with just cold memories of the terror. Then, in June 1995, hundreds of miles away in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, a string of robberies offered a strange twist.
It began in June of 1995 with a robbery in a private residence. Shortly after that, there was a robbery that we became aware of at a boutique. Then there was a robbery at a fur and jewelry store that took place beside the courthouse here in Sault Ste. Marie.
They weren't your typical robberies. The thief was a clever one. He targeted homes and businesses, looking for people who were alone and vulnerable, old folks or women. He would come up with a story posing as a potential buyer interested in advertised goods or services. In one case, an elderly man was selling a hospital bed. The robber acted interested, then said he had to talk to his wife. He came back the next day, and the man trusted him. But when the man wasn't looking, the robber tied him up, gagged him, and stole his money and valuables. This modus operandi became the robber's signature. He would restrain his victims, often using blindfolds alongside the bindings, striking fear into the hearts of those targeted. These robberies spanned homes and even businesses, including shops selling jewelry and fur. But the robber soon made a big mistake. He tried to sell a stolen ring in a pawn shop in Sudbury, Ontario, using his driver's license as ID. That mistake gave the police the break they needed. They finally had a name for the robber: Ronald West, a 48-year-old man. This news was shocking. Ronald wasn't just some criminal. He used to be a police officer. He joined the Toronto Police Force in his early 20s, way back in 1966, but quit just a few years later in 1972. The reason for him leaving the force wasn't clear, but records said he had resigned to find a different job. Ronald was married with 2 sons and seemed to be living a normal life with his second wife in Blind River, Ontario. For 2 days, police officers patiently observed Ronald from a nearby boathouse, suspecting him of criminal activity. Their suspicions were confirmed on June 30th, 1995, when a large police force raided his house after spotting him using a cell phone outside. The search uncovered a trove of stolen jewelry, hidden within his home and vehicles. Evidence of tampering was also found. Many rings had been damaged in an attempt to remove their precious stones. Realizing their investigation had yielded results, the police promptly arrested Ronald. Knowing he couldn't fight the charges, Ronald pleaded guilty to the robberies in August of that year. The judge, upon sentencing, delivered a scathing rebuke, calling Ronald's crimes shocking and coldly planned, acts that inflicted immense terror on his victims. Ronald was sentenced to 10 years in prison. As 1995 drew to a close, an inspector named Ed Pellerin had found himself in southern Ontario for a routine annual case review. Fate intervened when he ended up chatting with none other than Inspector Don McNeil about the Ronald West file. Pellerin mentioned offhandedly that after Ronald's imprisonment, his house in Blind River had been sold. During renovations, the new owners had stumbled upon a crucial piece of evidence. Tucked away in a plastic bag, hidden behind the bathroom ceiling tiles, they discovered a permit for a specific 9-shot .22 caliber revolver. The permit, issued on December 29, 1969, was registered in Ronald's name. Intriguingly, the purchase of the weapon itself could be traced back to 1972, just after Ronald had resigned from the police force. This detail sent a jolt through McNeil. The permit matched the description of the very same gun used in the unsolved murders of Doreen and Helen back in 1970.
It was for a 9-shot .22 caliber pistol. The weapon believed to be used in the 1970 murders was believed to be a 9-shot .22 caliber pistol.
Deciding to investigate further, McNeil dug deeper and discovered that Ronald had been off duty during both killings. Additionally, it came to light that Ronald had frequently vacationed in the same area as Doreen Morby, one of the victims. McNeil then reached out to officers who had served alongside Ronald in the 53rd Division of the Metropolitan Toronto Police. Their recollections painted a picture of a quiet, unassuming officer. He had competently performed his duties, but never went above and beyond the call of duty. The wheels of justice, though slow, eventually turned. Doreen and Helen's murders, which had already been classified as cold cases, were given a second life. McNeil, ever determined, found himself back on the investigation. One promising path seemed to be the preserved samples collected from the victims back in 1970. Thankfully, technology had caught up. A breakthrough came in the form of a letter which Ronald sent home to his wife from jail. Forensic analysis of the letter yielded a saliva sample.
The person who had licked the postage stamp may well have been the person who both of these women. The frequency of occurrence might have been perhaps 1 in 1,000 for this combined profile, which would mean that if you had 10,000 men in any one area, that any 10 of them could have contributed this particular sample.
Using this, investigators were able to build a strong enough case to obtain a court order for a blood test from Ronald himself. The results were undeniable. It was a match. Nearly 30 years after the horrific murders, this conclusive evidence finally led police to arrest Ronald for the unsolved killings. Ironically, during the initial investigation in 1970, over 3,000 suspects were interviewed. It's almost unbelievable that Ronald, who would have likely been part of the original manhunt for the murderer himself, somehow slipped through the cracks. His name never even appeared on the suspect list. Justice, though delayed, was finally served. On August 26, 1999, at the age of 52, Ronald was charged with first-degree murder for the 1970 assaults and killings. He ultimately pleaded guilty on August 7, 2001, and received 2 life sentences. Today, he remains incarcerated in an undisclosed medium security institution. On October 19, 1995, the young and vibrant 23-year-old nurse Christina Tina Marie, or Tina, left home to finally break free from her unhappy marriage. John Sandoval was once the love of her life, and she was deeply in love. However, the marriage soon fell apart, and she took the decision to finally move on. She left home determined to start anew, but tragically, it would be the last time anyone would ever see her. Tina vanished without a trace. Her disappearance left her loved ones in anguish, with no clues to her whereabouts for over 22 agonizing years. Police suspected John Sandoval, her ex-husband, but it led them nowhere. After 2 decades, she was finally found, although in a state her loved ones never hoped for. Why did Tina disappear without a trace? What sinister plan did she become a victim to? Tina was born on March 17, 1972, to Michael and Mary Ellen. Being the second of 9 children in her bustling family, she grew up to be a family-oriented person. She was a spirited kid and excelled in both school and college. She went to Windsor High School and was a skilled basketball and volleyball player, while also showcasing her skills as a singer in the school band. Overall, she had an impressive track record and was loved by all. As she grew up, she looked after her brothers and sisters, which made her caring and compassionate. As such, it was no surprise that she chose to become a nurse. Right after school, she applied at Ames Community College and earned an associate's degree in nursing. Her devotion to studies knew no bounds. Soon after, she began pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Northern Colorado. To gain experience, she even worked as a licensed practical nurse during weekends. Needless to say, she graduated in the top 5% of her nursing class in May of 1995. Her hard work had finally paid off. The same year, she joined as a nurse in the oncology department at North Colorado Medical Center. It was a fitting beginning for someone with such a compassionate heart. During the mid-'80s, John Sandoval entered Tina's life and swept her off her feet. John was an energetic student who was pursuing a career in radiology technology. The duo met for the first time at Ames Community College. Their connection was deep, and Tina found herself falling for his charm and tender words. After dating for a while, the couple decided to be each other's support system for the rest of their lives. On December 31st, 1991, in the backdrop of the breathtaking beauty of the Colorado Rocky Mountains, they exchanged their wedding vows. John even toasted for having the best woman besides her for the rest of his life. She was on top of the world. However, this seemingly happy marriage didn't last long, as John had been hiding a dark secret. 3 years into the marriage, Tina understood that things weren't working out between them. John never became a radiology technician and was struggling to maintain a regular job. However, that didn't bother Tina much. What truly shocked Tina was the revelation that her husband was, in fact, a prolific peeping Tom. The illusion of having a perfect marriage shattered in mere moments. Tina found it difficult to believe that John was someone who would sneak out to watch the private moments of neighbors in the middle of the night. At one point, she noticed him leaving their bed late at night, only to enter the neighbor's backyard and steal women's undergarments. To add on to the already disturbing behavior, John had kept those undergarments as some sort of twisted trophy. That wasn't all. He would even follow random young ladies and would stalk them for days, as he loved to watch them from the shadows as he indulged in his voyeuristic pleasure. After finding this out, Tina understood her marriage was beyond repair. She felt like being trapped in a nightmare. She had enough of John's perverse behavior and took the bold step of filing for divorce in 1995. In the hope of starting over, she left John and moved into a new apartment. However, John was not ready to let her go and began stalking her. There was even an instant where John parked his car near her apartment for several hours. John would even call the North Colorado Medical Center reception every morning at 6 a.m. The receptionist even told him that what he was doing was beyond pale. However, that did not deter him, and he was hell-bent on winning Tina back. After Tina left, the neighbors also began complaining about his drug and alcohol abuse. The police had to confront him frequently due to his tendencies as a peeping Tom. Overall, John found himself going through a heap of troubles that he brought upon himself. Despite the unsettling marriage, Tina found some solace through trusted friends at work and had begun to socialize again. She had even started dating and was finally at peace. However, in the back of her mind, her unresolved marriage always lingered, so she had decided to meet John and speed up the divorce. On October 19, 1995, Tina had decided to get off from her night shift early to meet John. She had even informed her sister and coworkers about her plan to meet her ex-husband after work. Being really nervous about meeting him, Tina told her sister and colleagues that if something bad were to happen, then the one responsible would be John. The meeting was really important as she had to get John to sign some crucial documents and address the IRS debt to quickly break free from the doomed marriage. Even though she tried to bring up the matter to John, it never ended well. He would act violently and oppose the idea of Tina dating someone else or letting her finalize the divorce. Tina understood that she had to at least take her sister Susan for the meeting. However, she was stuck at work and couldn't make it. So Susan asked Tina to contact her immediately after the meeting and update her. Unfortunately, Tina's update call never came. Susan waited for the entire day, and after a point, she understood waiting wouldn't do any good. She was still at work and had called her mother to check on Tina. Mary, Tina's mother, had rushed to Tina's apartment. Her heart skipped a beat when she found out her daughter was not in the apartment or at work. Filled with concern, she went to John's house next. His aunt, who rented the basement of the house, didn't give her a positive reply and stated she hadn't noticed them. Right when Mary was about to leave, she noticed Tina's coat was mysteriously left behind at John's house. Immediately, she could feel that something had been amiss. Alarmed, she called police right away, marking the beginning of a complicated investigation to unveil the truth behind Tina's disappearance. John was naturally the primary suspect due to their rocky marriage and the alarming reason behind it. Also, the fact that Tina feared something might happen to her upon meeting John couldn't be ignored, raising even more suspicion on him. Initially, the police searched Tina's apartment. It was clear that she went home after work as her nurse's uniform was found and nothing unusual was discovered from the apartment. However, they couldn't find her car. In the early hours of October 20th, around 3 a.m., Tina's car was located just 4 blocks away from John's house, heightening the suspicion. Police dogs were used in an attempt to track Tina's scent, which led the police straight to John's residence. They were absolutely convinced that they had the culprit and could arrest him in no time. Being a prolific peeping Tom wasn't the only black mark on John's record. He had a troubled past, with several arrests and convictions for harassment and burglary. Initially, the police had sent an investigator in regular clothes to keep watch until John reached home. It was 4:45 in the morning when he was finally spotted. However, when they reached him, John was already in the shower, so they couldn't confront him with possible evidence they could have collected before he showered. As John had sensed the police, he even tried to escape by jumping out of the bedroom window, but he ended up getting caught. Police obtained a search warrant for John's house and found his ex-wife's credit cards. However, the cards had not been used for 4 days before her disappearance. With the police being suspicious about John's overall activity and evidence, he was taken into interrogation. During the interrogation, the detectives had noticed fresh scratch marks on John's face, neck, chest, and shoulders. The police were determined to reveal the truth and check the surveillance cameras. They in fact found visuals of John returning home early in the morning on October 20th, 1995. Shockingly, the police had also found a wet shovel, rope, a 5-gallon bucket, and muddy clothes inside his car. Despite having such obvious signs, the police couldn't find solid evidence that would connect John to Tina's disappearance. Detective Keith Olson noted John's suspicious behavior and sent an officer to monitor him at home. However, nothing of relevance could be found. Due to a lack of solid evidence against John, the police were not able to hold him responsible and arrest him for the disappearance of Tina. Meanwhile, John was taken into custody as someone had already filed a trespassing case against him. As the evidence was strong, he pleaded guilty. He was sent to prison for 4 years based on that case. After release, he almost immediately moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. For nearly 2 decades, Tina's case sat on the cold and dusty shelf without finding a glimmer of hope. Tina's family was determined to bring the truth out. In 2009, a district attorney finally laid his hands on the case and issued an arrest. He brought into light evidence that was enough to officially pronounce Tina as dead and her suspicious disappearance to be considered a murder. The police left no stone unturned and inspected his Las Vegas home. What they witnessed was beyond imagination. There were 2 portraits of Tina on the wall, adorned in a petite black dress. Detective Mike Prill then got his hands on 100 VHS tapes and 70 mini VHS tapes. In those tapes, John was seen filming 4 women for about 17 minutes, until he assaulted one of them. Finally, on June 18, 2009, John Sandoval was arrested. During the trial, prosecution brought in John's cousin, Jesse Martinez. He played a crucial role in deciding the final verdict. 1 month after Tina left John, she had gotten into a relationship with Jesse. He stated that John always stalked Tina and was looking for a chance to harm her. On August 5, 2010, John was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. However, in spring of 2016, the court overturned his conviction due to a lack of solid evidence. John understood that he would never get out of the prison if he didn't negotiate. So he chose to finally disclose the location of his ex-wife in exchange for a leniency in his prison time. With no other option left, Tina's family had reluctantly agreed to his demand. In March of 2017, after 22 years of not knowing Tina's whereabouts, the family met their precious family member at Sunset Memorial Garden Cemetery, located at 3400 West 28th Street in Greeley, Colorado. Tina's body was wrapped in several layers of industrial-grade plastic. She had been buried 2 feet below the grave of a World War II veteran, Arthur Hurt. So how did John know about such burial details? In 1995, John used to work at the cemetery. After finding out a burial was to take place on October 20th, 1995, he dug 2 feet below the open grave and buried Tina's corpse. Later, the cemetery workers had unknowingly buried the body of the veteran over Tina's body. Despite showing the burial site, John still did not admit to her murder. What was in it for John? As part of the plea deal, he received a reduced sentence of 25 years in prison, along with an additional 5 years of parole. John's release date has been a topic of concern. However, due to a plea agreement reached in 2017, he became eligible for parole in 2020, after serving just 12 years due to credit for time served. Tina's family, particularly her sister, Kelly Fryan, expressed surprise at the parole eligibility date, as they had not anticipated it until much later. They continued to oppose John Sandoval's potential release and submit victim statements every 6 months to contest it. John's next parole hearing is scheduled for January 2026, with his expected release date set for 2032, as stated in his inmate records. Despite these dates, his release is not guaranteed, and Tina's family remains vigilant in their efforts to keep him behind bars. The family was genuinely alarmed when John tried striking a plea deal in exchange for her burial site. Although they found closure, they continue to fight to keep the animal behind the cage. Although they found Tina, the truth behind her murder remains a mystery, and that sets the case different from other such heinous crimes. On the 25th of November 1994, a day after Thanksgiving, a missing persons report was filed in Downey, California. 3 females, a mother. He told the manager that Luce was not available, so he would be coming down to the shop to get their last paychecks. The manager explained to Gonzalez that a third party couldn't be involved in paycheck clearance, and Luce had to come and get her own, and he could only get his. The manager waited for them, but neither of them ever showed up. Finding him suspicious, the police decided to look further into Luce and Gonzalez's relationship. Luce and Gonzalez's relationship was described as stormy. They had a long history, but they seemed to have taken a series of breaks in their relationship. In 1990, they became parents to twins, a boy named Carlos and a girl named Raquel. Further information concerning the twins were withheld by the police to protect their privacy. About a year after the twins' birth, they went on another break, and it lasted 3 years. But they settled their differences, one would guess, because in November of 1994, they moved into an apartment in the 11,600 block of Old River School Road. Downey, together with Luce's daughter and the couple's now 4-year-old twins. But less than a week after moving in together, it seemed like the couple weren't going to work out after all. The building manager saw Gonzalez packing his things. Gonzalez had just signed a 1-year lease and had been seen with his girlfriend and their children days prior. Out of curiosity, the building manager inquired where he was going. Gonzalez had announced that they were finally over. Luce was moving back to Mexico, and he was not going to remain in the apartment. All this info only further made Gonzalez seem like a character to be questioned, but they had no idea where he had gone, or if he was even alive. The police also set up surveillance on the Mexico border, trying to find Gonzalez and his van. But Gonzalez was never found, and eventually, with no leads, the trail went cold. Sergeant Jim Elsesser was stains matched with the living children as their mother. The other blood stain would, by default, be a daughter's DNA. The detective set off to Las Vegas to retrieve saliva samples of the twins. In 2003, detectives from Los Angeles collaborated with Los Angeles detective Linda Turner. Gonzalez was traced to a trailer park along Boulder Highway. They had nothing solid on Gonzalez yet, and they couldn't risk messing up the case, so they used a ruse so as not to alert him to their real motive. They pretended to be Child Protective Services, and on February 3, 2003, they knocked on Gonzalez's trailer door. Gonzalez was apparently quite cooperative with the officers and even let them talk to his children. Gonzalez appeared shocked by the question before giving the classic response that she had left him. The children seemed blank upon hearing this question. They simply answered they didn't have a mother. Upon performing a house inspection, the officers reported that they were living in appalling conditions. The house was dirty and filled with dog feces. There was some food, but The entire setting was disorganized. However, so as not to make him suspicious, they complimented Gonzalez on being such a strong single father. The officers then left, but later went back to see the children at the local Boys and Girls Club. The children recognized them from their first visit, and there was no resistance. The officers claimed to have come for a health check. After basic chit-chat, they handed the children toothbrushes and had them illustrate how they brushed their teeth. This was how detectives took mouth swabs from both children. After testing the saliva samples from the twins, the DNA results showed that the children were direct descendants of the blood found in the closet. This helped officers conclude that Luz Messino had bled in the closet. This was a step in the right direction, and now it was time to face Gonzalez. Gonzalez had a sister, Delia Gonzalez Mora, who lived near the Jordan High School in South Carolina. A young girl who worked with Mora's daughter at a Burger King had gone missing. The police didn't want Mora to know they were investigating her brother, so in early 2003 they approached her under the guise of questioning her regarding the missing Burger King employee case. Strangely, the first thing Mora said when she opened the door was, "I was wondering when you guys were going to come over here." Mora wasn't helpful with the missing girl case, so the authorities left to return another day. Before this, with the help of the Las Vegas police, Gonzalez's phone was wiretapped, and the detectives awaited to unleash their scheme. The detectives returned to Mora's home days after their first visit. This time they asked about Luz Messino and her daughters directly. Mora denied any knowledge of Luz and her daughters. But 5 minutes after the police left, Mora drove to a payphone to call her brother. She informed him of her little visit from the police. She told him that the police had been asking about him and Luz, and it seemed like trouble. She offered to drive Gonzalez and the children to Mexico. Unknown to the siblings, the police had been listening to every word of their conversation through the wiretap on Gonzalez's phone. The police quickly got in touch with the Las Vegas detectives to track down Gonzalez before he made a run for it. Gonzalez was walking his children back home from the Boys and Girls Club when the police approached him. They mentioned that they wanted to talk about Luz Messino, and he reportedly went pale and was visibly shaken. The twins were also very upset by their father being led away, but Detective Linda Turner stayed back to comfort them.
Detectives took him.
Then, hours into questioning, his story changed. He claimed 2 apartment movers had stabbed Luz and the girls to death. He then wound up helping them dump the bodies in a Los Angeles riverbed. No one bought that story, and he was booked based on his confession of being at the scene and being an accessory. Gonzalez, at the age of 48, was booked on May 1, 2003, on the suspicion of triple homicide that was committed between November 24th and December 6th of 1994. He, of course, pleaded not guilty. As the trial date neared, his story changed again. His attorneys approached the district attorney in the hopes of striking a deal. Gonzalez confessed to the murders of his girlfriend and her daughters in a 1-page statement. As part of the deal, he did not have to explain how he committed the murders and how he cleaned it up. He revealed he had dumped their bodies in the Nevada desert. So after being found guilty of all charges, 49-year-old Gonzalez was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on June 21, 2004. Mora was also arrested on account of suspicion of murder, but the Los Angeles County District Attorney didn't press charges because there was not sufficient evidence to conduct a trial. Gonzalez's body dumping story checked out with police records. On March 26, 1996, some kids walking a dog stumbled upon a body in a ditch near Hollywood Boulevard, just outside of Las Vegas. As local authorities were called to the scene, they discovered 2 more bodies. Newspaper reports at the time had tagged them the Hollywood Jane Does because they assumed they were one of the many sex workers that had got flown into Las Vegas. Now, after Gonzalez's confession, the bones from this discovery were dug up and tested against the samples from the crime scene. The bodies indeed belonged to Luz Messino and her daughters Edith and Gabriella. The mother and daughters currently lay in Palm Memorial Park, Las Vegas. Everyone who worked on the case never forgot the children. Luz's twins lost their mother and sisters at the age of 4. They didn't even know about the existence of their sisters, and Gonzalez consistently had told them that they didn't have a mother. The only family they did know, their father, was now going to be locked up for the rest of his life. The twins were placed into a Las Vegas foster care soon after.
DNA evidence and advanced technology being credited for answers to 2 Virginia cold cases. They were unsolved for more than 3 decades. One man believed to be responsible for both.
On November 14, 1986, Jacqueline Lard's routine day at her Stafford County Realty office took a dark turn when she vanished after work. The next day, a crime scene at her office hinted at a violent struggle, and her body was later found hidden under a carpet in a wooded area miles away. Fast forward to 1989. Amy Baker, an 18-year-old visiting her family, disappeared on the way home. Her car was found abandoned, starting a mystery that lingered for decades. How did these 2 cases connect? And what breakthrough finally brought their closure in 2024? Amy Baker, a vibrant soul born on March 16, 1971, in Springfield, Fairfax County, Virginia, brought joy to her family as the cherished daughter of Mark Baker and Sue Eisler. In a significant life change, the Baker family, which also included Amy's younger brother David, transitioned from the bustling atmosphere of Falls Church to the serene community of Hartwood in Stafford County. This move was driven by her parents, Mark and Sue's desire for a more spacious home and a slice of tranquility away from Fairfax County's urban hustle. Amy, amidst adjusting to her new surroundings, frequently returned to Falls Church, a place brimming with familiar faces and cherished memories to visit friends and family. The Baker household was a nurturing environment, fostering Amy's blossoming interests. She had a passion for field hockey, showcasing her skills on the varsity team, and a love for capturing moments through photography. With artistic ambitions, Amy aimed her sights on attending art school in Savannah, Georgia. Meanwhile, she found joy in working as an event photographer at the local mall, where she would photograph children with seasonal figures like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, capturing joyous moments for families. In contrast, details of Jacqueline Lard's early life remain less documented. Born in 1954, Jacqueline was a dedicated real estate agent in Stafford County by profession. Married to Ronald Lard, who worked for the DEA, they shared their lives with their 2 children. While specific insights into her personal interests and background are scarce, it's clear Jacqueline was a committed professional and a loving mother, playing integral roles both at work and home.
Hey there, you know, the murder of Jackie Lard has never been far from the minds of those who knew her best. In fact, one woman we spoke with says this case has shaped her career.
I always think about Jackie and any other realtor who's ever been abducted, abused, raped, or whatever, doing this job. It's been kind of my soapbox, so to speak. I'm an educator at heart, so when I'm teaching my colleagues in my office and talking with other colleagues that I might network around the globe, I always talk to them about safety and trusting your instincts.
In the quiet of Stafford County, The disappearance of Jacqueline Lard on November 14, 1986, marked the beginning of a long, unresolved mystery. Jacqueline was wrapping up her day at Mount Vernon Realty around 9 p.m., unaware it would be her last moment seen alive. The subsequent morning revealed a chilling scene at her office, hinting at a violent altercation, along with both Jacqueline and her missing car. The Stafford County detectives, alongside the Virginia State Police Crime Scene Unit and the FBI, scoured the scene, collecting vital clues. It was only a day later that a startling discovery was made by two young individuals playing in a wooded area in Woodbridge. Jacqueline's body, concealed under discarded carpet, confirming her tragic fate. Her abandoned vehicle was later found in Fairfax County on December 18th, with further evidence gathered. This painstaking collection of evidence, although not immediately fruitful, would become crucial in the resolution of her case decades later.
In March of 1989, Stafford County resident Amy Baker, 18 years old, was found murdered near the exit ramp from I-95 to Backlick Road in Springfield.
Amy Baker's story unfolded in a similarly harrowing manner. On March 29, 1989, the 18-year-old's journey to visit her parents came to an abrupt halt on Interstate 95 when her car broke down. Leaving her blue 1970 Volkswagen Beetle, she aimed for a nearby Exxon station. Her absence from reaching home alarmed her mother, Sue Baker, all through the night, who, despite her attempts to rationalize Amy's delay as an adult decision, sensed a dire outcome by dawn. Sue's frantic search involved calls to hospitals, towing services, relatives, and the police, only to learn her daughter's vehicle had been found, abandoned the previous night. The response to Amy's disappearance was mixed, with initial law enforcement speculation suggesting she might have chosen to disappear. However, the circumstances, her belongings left behind, and the peculiar location of her vehicle contradicted this theory. Despite law enforcement deploying resources, including a helicopter, the family felt compelled to take matters into their own hands. Armed with homemade missing persons posters, Sue Baker and her sister-in-law, Mary Billette, canvassed the area. Their efforts were a testament to their determination navigating the pre-digital age's challenges to raise awareness about Amy's disappearance. The search culminated in a heart-wrenching discovery near the Blacklick Road Bridge, where Amy's body, camouflaged by foliage, lay merely yards from her last known location. This grim find on Good Friday would forever alter the Baker family's lives. These tragic events, separated by years and circumstances, shared the torment of unresolved questions and the agony of families left in limbo. The investigation into Jacqueline Lard's untimely death saw law enforcement agencies, both state and federal, pooling their resources and expertise in a determined quest for justice. The collaboration spanned the Stafford County Sheriff's Office, Prince William County Police, the FBI, and the DEA, forming a formidable task force aimed at unraveling the mystery of her demise. Despite the extraction of DNA from collected evidence and exhaustive searches through both Virginia and national DNA databases via CODIS, the killer's identity remained elusive. Direct comparisons against numerous persons of interest and familiar searches yielded no fruitful results, leading the investigation to a standstill and eventually turning cold. The tragic discovery of Amy Baker's body marked a critical juncture in her case. Alerted by the desperate search of Sue Baker and her sister-in-law, law enforcement officials swiftly secured the scene.
We're walking into that area, into the wooded area, and that's how we found her. I knew it was her. Yeah. I was close enough that I knew that I saw her.
The sight of Amy's new tennis shoes, barely worn since her 18th birthday, was a harrowing confirmation about the devastating loss to her mother. Despite the rapid response following this grim discovery, the handling of Amy's case by authorities left her family disillusioned and frustrated. Criticisms were voiced regarding the initial search efforts, deemed insufficient by the bereaved family, who lamented the tragic necessity of discovering their loved one themselves, a task they felt should have been accomplished by the police within the initial days of Amy's disappearance. The autopsy revealed a vicious end. Amy had been beaten, violated, and strangled, her life extinguished within a tragically short time frame after her departure from her vehicle. The investigation transitioned into a homicide case, with the family and community reeling from the shock and mourning the profound loss. In the wake of Amy's murder, the police sought public assistance, focusing on two vehicles of interest spotted near Amy's abandoned car: a dark-colored early 80s Buick and a blue Ford Escort. Despite these efforts and a surge of tips following the announcement of Amy's murder, a particularly notable call to Crime Stoppers remained a tantalizing lead that never fully materialized into a breakthrough. The caller, believed to have crucial information, never re-engaged with the authorities despite their pleas. This unfulfilled lead, alongside the urgent appeal for the caller to come forward again, underscored the challenges and frustrations inherent in the investigation. With no potential leads coming forth, this case eventually also turned cold. In the relentless pursuit of justice for Jacqueline Lard and Amy Baker, the investigative teams, fueled by a mix of tenacity and the latest advancements in forensic technology, achieved a major breakthrough that led to solving these decades-old cold cases in 2024.
It was November 1986. Sheriff David Decatur had just joined the law enforcement agency.
Stafford County was a smaller county, much smaller, and our department was much smaller.
Sheriff Decatur of the Stafford County Sheriff's Office, who had been connected to the Lard case since its inception in 1986, never let the investigation fall into dormancy. His commitment to finding justice for Jacqueline was mirrored in the efforts of the detectives handling Amy Baker's case, each driven by an unwavering resolve.
Detective Dave Wood took on the case as one of his last before retirement. His focus, genetic genealogy using the DNA carefully collected nearly 4 decades ago.
County Board of Supervisors approved the funding because this is independent. This is not a state lab. It is quite expensive, but the rewards, here we are.
The key to unlocking these cases came from the retired SCSO detective Dave Wood's decision to utilize forensic investigative genetic genealogy. This investigative approach, which combines DNA analysis with genealogical research, was employed to shed new light on the killer's identity. Parabon Nanolabs, a leader in DNA phenotyping, became an instrumental partner in this endeavor. Their sophisticated analysis linked the DNA evidence from Jacqueline Lard's murder scene to that of Amy Baker, conclusively connecting the two cases for the first time. Detectives delved into the circumstances surrounding Amy's tragic end, established that her car had run out of gas, and deduced that she could have likely been seeking assistance when she encountered her assailant. This crucial piece of the puzzle added depth to the understanding of her final moments and underscored the ferocity of her encounter. The breakthrough came when Fairfax County Police Department's cold case detectives submitted their evidence to DNA Labs International in 2021, resulting in the development of a comprehensive DNA profile. This profile, once uploaded to the Virginia State Database, unveiled a direct link to the ongoing investigation of Jacqueline Lard's murder. The connection between the two cases was a pivotal moment, propelling the investigation forward with renewed vigor. On December 14, 2023, detectives identified a family name potentially associated with the suspect, leading them down a path that would eventually bring them to Elroy Neal Harrison, a 65-year-old resident of Stafford County. This identification was the culmination of years of meticulous investigation, innovative technological application, and the tireless pursuit of answers by all involved. Subsequent follow-up on this lead and the procurement of a search warrant for Harrison's DNA solidified their suspicions. In February of 2024, the Department of Forensic Science confirmed the match based on the DNA collected from Harrison. As a result, after nearly 4 decades, the mystery of who was responsible for the deaths of Jacqueline Lard and Amy Baker was finally solved. Elroy Neal Harrison, a name that remained obscure until the groundbreaking resolution of 2 long-standing cold cases, was born in 1959. While much of his early life remains shrouded in mystery, what is known paints a picture of a man who once lived among the residents of Stafford County, Virginia. His life took a significant turn in 1983 when he was apprehended for bank robbery in Virginia, an act that led to his incarceration. His time behind bars was a chapter that ended on June 30th, 1986, when Harrison was released back into society. This timeline is crucial, as it closely precedes the tragic events involving Jacqueline Lard and Amy Baker. Harrison's past, marked by criminal activity, offers a glimpse into the troubled journey that ultimately converged with the lives of these 2 victims.
Detective Wood himself made the arrest of 65-year-old Elroy Harrison of Stafford.
Our job is to eliminate you as a suspect as well as I find the guilty people, and that's what I wanted to do before I retired, is give closure to Mr. Lard.
On March 4th, 2024, a significant breakthrough occurred in the long-standing cold cases of Jacqueline Lard and Amy Baker, when Elroy Neal Harrison was indicted by a Stafford County grand jury. The charges against him were grave: first-degree murder, abduction with the intent to defile, and aggravated malicious wounding of Jacqueline Lard, alongside breaking and entering with the intent to commit murder. The following day, on March 5, 2024, law enforcement officers made their move, arresting Harrison at his Stafford residence. At the age of 65, Harrison found himself facing the weight of the law as he was booked into the Rappahannock Regional Jail in Stafford, charged with murder, abduction, assault, and burglary. Being held without the possibility of bond, Harrison awaited his arraignment, a pivotal moment in this decades-long saga. Scheduled for April 5, 2024, this event marked the beginning of the legal proceedings against him. Throughout the years since the tragic loss of Jacqueline Lard and Amy Baker, their families have navigated the complex journey of grief and resilience. Edwin Lard, Jacqueline's son, exemplifies this strength, growing up in the shadow of his mother's unsolved murder. Edwin chose a path of service, becoming a Navy medical corpsman before transitioning to a paramedic. His commitment to helping others didn't stop there. He went on to become the executive director of Rescue Task Force, a threat protection consulting group. Edwin, a father to 3 daughters and a son, stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of his family. He firmly states, "My mom was his victim. I'm not his victim. My family's not his victim. And I'll never be a victim." This sentiment of refusing to be defined by tragedy is echoed by the Baker family. In the face of unspeakable loss, they have also chosen a path of resilience. They had this to say.
35 years, and for the other lady, it was 38. It's just amazing. You wanted to laugh, you wanted to do a high five.
I thought I'd be dead, really, that I died before I knew.
To be clear, for them, this is not closure.
That's not a word I use because you can't have closure. It's like putting a top on a box. You can't do that when it's your child.
But it's one step closer to getting justice.
I want to see him never see the light of day again.
For their only daughter.
Here's Amy. See, so when we come out of our bedroom, we see her.
Who was killed just 13 days after her 18th birthday.